Welcome to the final major arc of Battle Angel Alita, the Barjack Rebellion. This is by far the longest arc in the series, comprising 16 chapters, 36 to 51. There is an epilogue arc after, which is not canon to the sequel series or side stories, but we'll talk about that a bit at the end of the video. For now, let's do a small recap. Once upon a time, Alita was happy living in the scrapyard with her friends and found family, but disaster stripped that away from her in a single day. She lost many people, was rejected by others, and the man who saved her from the scrap, Dr. Ito, was taken from her. This was indirectly caused by one Professor Nova, an eccentric and amoral scientist that gave Alita the tools to defeat her enemy and promised to revive Ito before disappearing into the wasteland. Alita defeated the monster that Nova had unleashed, but was nearly destroyed in the process, and the powers in the floating city Zalem only agreed to save her if she became their agent. Her mission would be to hunt down the rogue scientist Professor Nova. For 10 years she hunted and killed for Zalem, never getting any closer to finding her quarry, and falling into a spiral of despair. Then she met Figure 4, a martial artist that helped her reconnect to her humanity, and in the process she found news that Nova had fulfilled his promise to resurrect Ito, and that both were now working with a group called the Barjack Mobile Bandits, a band of wasteland rebels dedicated to destroying Zalem. This is where we pick up the story. We begin with a memory of Alita's time with Figure. It seems after they made their way out of the desert, they found their way to Alhambra, Figure 4's hometown. It's a fishing village in the middle of an old ruined city on the coast. Alita had asked Figure to make a promise, which he accepts, that he'll wait for her in Alhambra until her job with Tuned is done. She tells him not to worry, and lightly warns him not to cheat. And that's the last we'll see of Figure for a while. I mentioned this briefly in the last video, but it is very weird to me that he's introduced as a rather pivotal person at this point in Alita's life, someone that reminded her of important truths and that she wants to be with. Yet in the very next chapter, he is sidelined for the foreseeable future, on the first page no less. It's a bit of an odd choice. Let's put that aside. Let's continue into the Barjack Rebellion. We start not with Alita in the wastes, but in Zalem. We get our first up-close look at the enigmatic city looming over the scrapyard. Massive buildings and even parks with artificial lakes. Its residents lounge in luxury, save for one young woman concerned about being late. Her name is Lou Collins, a Libra with blood type AB and a proud citizen of Zalem. She can't seem to find the Ground Inspection Bureau on the building's index, so that has her worried. She passed the second operator test for the GIB and was excited to help keep Zalem safe, but now she's going to be late on her first day of work. It's quite depressing. She turns quick and runs straight into the man we know as Director Eisenberg, but Lou doesn't know that. She asks for directions to the GIB. Without bothering to introduce himself, he offers to lead her to GIB. She's happy to hear that, but it's rather disconcerting to Lou that he walks away from the bank of elevators and leads her into a dimly lit maintenance stairwell filled with exposed pipes and bursts of steam. Lou gets scared and her imagination goes into overdrive. She imagines the man turning on her and attacking, tearing at her clothes. In the real world, the man leads her to the front door of the GIB and turns to let her know they've arrived, only for Lou to pull a gun on him, trembling like a leaf and calling him a sicko. A man in a lab coat bursts out the door at the commotion, comforting Lou and questioning her report that the director sexually harassed her with a note of shock. The man in question sputters indignantly. What a great way to make an impression on a new boss. Lou heard his title though, and that's enough for her to figure out he's her boss. She greets him formally and introduces herself as the new operator, which she already knew. Eisenberg seems to want to brush past all this, though he pauses at the door to clarify something. He actually prefers the company of men. Lou is suitably mortified at what she just did and beet red with embarrassment. The other man, Dr. Russell, is sympathetic. Trying to leave a better impression, Lou tries effusively praising the rather dingy control room, though Russell tells her she can be honest, it's a dump. Internally, she's freaking out a bit. It's dark, cold, and not what she signed up for. Lou asks aloud where the rest of the operating team is, but the doctor tells her she's it. The plan is to expand the team as more tuned operatives come online. Lou is alarmed, but Russell explains that for political and legal reasons they have to operate on a shoestring budget. She just begs him to please improve the lighting in the scary stairwell. Russell shows Lou to her workstation, where she happily greets a nearby spider. I don't think I've ever seen anyone this chipper at work. Brushing right by that, Russell notes that she had a perfect score on the simulated tests, but he wants her to remember that she'll be dealing with a real person. Alita may be a cyborg with a very different life from either of them, but she's still a human being just like them. With that sentiment, he takes his leave and tells her to come to him with any questions. Now that she's finally here, Lou is fired up to do her job and protect Zalem. She's only seen documents and footage of Alita, but the cyborg has made an impression. The wily independence of a cat, the stubbornness, the confidence, the pride, the thirst for self-expression, and yet she's shy, uncooperative, bursting with agency, rebellious. In other words, feisty but childish. Certainly a Virgo, Lou believes, possibly blood type B or O. Yes, Lou is one of those types of girls. More seriously, Lou believes that Alita must have experienced great hardship. She wonders if it's some hellish rage or loathing of her fate, but quickly shakes herself out of it before her overactive imagination can get the better of her. She reminds herself that first impressions are important, and this one could be key to Zalem's future, as she presses a button to activate the monitor. Lou looks on in trepidation until she sees Alita, kneeling on a hill and facing the sun. The operator tries introducing herself, but Alita is silent. She has her head bowed and hands clasped in front of her as if in prayer. This makes Lou anxious, and she can tell from Alita's brainwave readouts that she's awake. She must be teasing the new girl, poor thing. Or at least that's what Lou thinks. Can't they just be friends? Lou remembers that there's a shock button for emergencies, but she hesitates to use it. That would be a terrible way to start off their relationship if she ever wants Alita to trust her. Plus, from the looks of the grime, someone used this on her a lot in the past. Just another reason to dislike Eisenberg. Finally, Alita responds. She says that she was staring at the night sky. It seems Lou caught Alita in an introspective moment. She had been watching the sky since before sunrise, entranced by the infinite spectrum of shifting colors from deep blue, the likes of which she'd never seen, and so on. And then the blue of the sky dropped down on her. Lou is baffled, but Alita goes on, suggesting that instead she should describe the sensation as her whole body exploding to bits, leaving only her heart racing upward, higher and higher. She was no longer herself. She had fused with the blue of the sky, enveloping the entire world. Alita can't say if it was only for a few seconds or several hours, but it was a powerful experience. Only now does she understand how many different people she's met, and how many sad and cruel things have transpired, and yet there is nothing in this world that is without meaning, and no person has ever truly passed. We see memories of the living and the dead behind her. Ito, Jashugan, Hugo, and Figure, even the likes of Teagle, Knucklehead, Zapan, and Makaku. Each of them left an impact on Alita that she carries with her always. Lou is very impressed by Alita's strength, but shakes herself out of it to introduce herself. Alita responds politely, which the operator happily marks as her first success. However, she immediately notes readings on the thermosensors. Alita is not alone. She's already noticed 4 or 5 hostiles, very skilled and probably out to kill her. Alita raises a knife and gives thanks, as 5 ninjas burst from the ground around her, each slicing through the air with a different weapon. Our heroine dodges them with casual grace, asking, "For what purpose were you born? So that I might kill you?" The ninjas do not respond, peering at her from their dark cowls silently. Alita crosses her knife and Damascus blade with a grin. So be it. Through all of this, Lou is freaking out, but Alita yells at her to snap out of it and do her job. Check the area for traps, poison in the atmosphere, and other things. She does this by using tiny bug-shaped robot drones that drop from Alita and scurry about. Ew. These Gonzamon machines are probes outfitted with advanced sensors that relay their information to a computer in Zalem for analysis. Instantly, Lou gets a lot of hits and superimposes the trap locations on Alita's vision. That doesn't seem to get in the way of her fighting. She's already stabbed one ninja in the face with her knife and is in the midst of bisecting another with the Damascus blade. She slices through another one, but something feels wrong, like it wasn't a solid target. Something sprays Alita in the face. Arms and legs deploy from the two halves of the ninja, two distinct cyborg units. They announce that this is the cloning of Mashira Ninjutsu. Alita is impressed, but blinded. She tells Lou that she's using ultrasonic and drops smoke bombs. This is another tuned feature made possible by the remote analysis of Zalem's computer systems. Alita's vocal cords can produce an ultrasonic beam that picks up echoes, and when these are analyzed, the system produces images of her surroundings at 60 frames per second. The ninjas have apparently gotten confused in the smoke and start attacking each other. Alita faces them, and the fight in the smoke is over quickly. The haze fades, and Alita stands victorious over the carnage, only for a crosshair to settle on her head. The distant sniper aligns his shot, only for a laser to come burning out of the sky to slice brutally through his head. This is another tuned benefit, the Gabriel Support System, a hovering drone that acts as a relay between Alita and Zalem, providing support with sensors and sniping lasers. Alita takes the time to clean her eye, after removing it from her head, before turning to her fallen foe. Apparently, she made sure to hit one with a paralyzing needle so she can find out why they attacked her. The captive starts gurgling, but then its mouth opens far too wide. A light comes from its throat. Then a large monitor pushes its way out of the ninja's throat. What the hell is this? That's Alita's reaction, but a familiar voice comes from the machine. Perverse laughter rings out, and the voice says he hasn't seen Alita in ages. Professor Desty Nova's face appears on the monitor as he tells her it's been precisely 10 years, 8 months, and 16 days. That's how long Alita has been a tuned agent and how long she's been chasing the mad professor, so she has a strong reaction. Lou realizes quickly that this is a real-time stream rather than a recording and begins tracing the source. Nova says that he'd thought Alita and the Berserker had destroyed each other, but he seems pleased to see she's made of sterner stuff. Alita's fist shakes and she reminds him of the promise he made. She grabs the ninja-turned-TV stand by the collar and shakes, shouting that Nova promised to bring Ito back to life and demanding that the professor let her see him. Unperturbed, Nova assures Alita that she'll have a chance for a reunion, that is, if Ito wants to see her. That gives Alita pause, and she demands to know what Nova means by that, but the ninja starts sparking. Alita is forced to let go as Nova tells her that if she wants to catch them, she'll have to put an end to Den of Barjack first. The ninja explodes as our heroine leaps clear. Alita asks Lou if she was able to trace the source of the transmission, but Lou wasn't able to get anything more than it coming from the southwest. Alita broods over Nova's words and considers. Den, huh? In a distant corner of the wasteland, on a large plain by a vast canyon, two groups throw up large dust clouds. A massive cyborg slices cars in half to demonstrate his power. He announces himself as Veneto. A small man at his feet extols his prowess, exclaiming that Veneto is the greatest champion the Scrapyard's Coliseum has ever seen, with 306 victories, 0 defeats, and 74 of those being successful title defenses. He's run out of challengers in the Scrapyard and has come here to challenge Den for the right to the factory's 100 million chip bounty on his head. Veneto shouts out, demanding a one-on-one duel with Den. The assembled vehicles of Barjack rumble and rev their engines in response, collected before what looks like the throne of a huge cyborg. A small quivering cyborg turns to his leader and asks what they should do. Den responds that he never refuses a fight and strides out to meet his challenger in a massive form resembling a samurai. Veneto's promoter urges the camera crew they brought with them to make sure they get everything. The champion Veneto versus Den, Tyrant of the Wilderness, would be a hell of a card. One of the cameramen wonders if this is really Den, since they heard he had the lower half of a horse. A truck of some kind rolls up to Den carrying a massive sword, which he names the Car Cleaver. Veneto mocks him as the wheels on his arms begin to whir, suggesting he couldn't possibly fight with a sword that weighs tons. His racket wheels will slice Den to ribbons. Veneto rushes to begin his assault, using his wheels to launch a flurry of attacks from 4 directions at once, a move he calls the Aztec Calendar Wheel, designed to shear away armor with painstaking precision. Indeed, chunks of Den's armor go flying, and Den's followers gasp in concern. The promoter is disappointed, already considering this a bust. Veneto decides to finish the fight, closing the distance with a sharp claw raised, declaring his intent to carve out Den's heart and offer it in sacrifice to the sun. Den falls to his knees, and then moves with terrible speed. The blow carves right through the champion, killing him and slicing him in half in a single strike. Wordlessly, Veneto falls. Den pronounces that one blade is all he needs as he looks down at his fallen foe. The promoter, far from being put out or frightened, rushes forward to offer Den a contract. Sign up with him and Den would make a lot of money in the Coliseum. The leader of Barjack responds with his foot, crushing the fat man into a bloody paste. Den calls the man a miserable parasite, proclaiming death to all who align with Zalem. Sometime later, it seems the tuned office has a new toy. It's a cute little mini Alita on a mechanical arm. Lou is a big fan. Dr. Russell explains that this is a prototype interactive interface. He directs A1, Alita, to try moving the figure. She can, and immediately uses it to punch Lou, who decides this isn't so cute after all. This isn't Alita's only new piece of kit from Tuned. She's riding a slick, one-wheeled motorcycle on a mechanical arm, and she's loving it. Lou tries to have a serious conversation with Alita, talking about how they can make Tuned a force to be reckoned with, and they have a great responsibility. This fight could determine the very fate of Zalem. And Lou thinks Alita's motivations are too personal for comfort. Alita says it can't be helped. She's just one more insect crawling around in the dirt. Not like you Zalemites gazing down on the world from the sky. Lou sputters. That's not what she was trying to say. Alita uses her miniature to pull on Lou's cheek, remarking that she sure knows how to play the lofty idealist for being a pampered rich girl from Zalem. The operator retaliates by jerking the control for Alita's bike. It does a flip, catapulting Alita into a nearby rock face. Our heroine starts using her miniature counterpart to attack Lou's face, but their squabble is interrupted by a beeping notification. It seems the Gabriel's monitoring AI has found something. Somewhere on the road ahead, there's a holdup going down. A large bandit wielding a strange, cobbled-together-looking weapon is menacing a truck. He reacts with outrage to the idea that he might let them go after paying a toll, demanding to know if they think the Great Sentinel is some kind of joke. His followers insist they can see relief on their faces. They must be thinking, at least they aren't Barjack. The poor men try assuring them that this isn't the case. The caravan is just on its way to barter with someone called Chaos and don't have much cash on them. The chief is still incensed, insisting they are a proud clan of bandits. They've been working this bit of land since his grandpa's generation. Do they want a face full of piston launcher, their clan heirloom? His followers want him to make an example of them, but internally the bandit chief is rather squeamish about killing. He gets constipated for 3 days after having to kill a man. The confrontation is interrupted by one of the bandits plucking a young girl from behind the truck. She was hiding in the cargo. She denies this. She wasn't hiding, she was enjoying a nap, along with her very familiar-looking cyber dog. The chief is relieved. He figures that if he can scare the girl and make her cry, he'll be able to save face with his followers without having to kill anyone. Well, he chose the wrong target for that strategy. The driver of this caravan explains that she was not his kid, but a hitchhiker they picked up. The girl notices something and perks up. She points at the pile of cargo the bandits are appropriating and shouts that all that stuff is hers. She won it gambling, apparently. Those turd buckets need to get their greasy hands off it. The bandit chief is shocked. Doesn't the girl understand the danger she's in? Now he has to scare her quickly before anyone can question his authority. He raises the piston launcher over his head with a threatening posture and shouts at her, "This cargo belongs to us now. You got a problem with that, little girl?" The girl grins, noting that they're thieves, so she bets thrill-seekers like them enjoy a high-stakes gamble. She's right, as it turns out. Before long, a pair of dice tumbles across the dirt and the bandit chief is losing, and not for the first time. The bandits complain about their chief, asking what the hell he's doing. The girl sits in front of a great pile of her winnings. Everything from the cargo is hers again already. She praises the man for his bold spirit and rattles the dice in a cup with a smug grin. The girl asks if he has anything left to bet with. The bandit chief is rapidly losing control of the situation, but that gambler's fever has him in its grip, because he thinks he has to go all out to make her cry for mercy. He calls himself a high roller and lays the piston launcher down for the bet. His followers try to restrain him, reminding him that it's the soul of their band. One of them lifts his own scrap-engineered weapon. He'll take out this kid and put an end to this sorry scene. The cyberhound leaps past the bandit before he can do anything, its ears fanned out as a blade. The bandit's head falls off, or nearly so, much to the horror of his comrades as it sprays blood into the air. The dog lands at alert, and immediately falls back to sleep. The girl complains that he can't just go to sleep in the middle of things, but the bandit chief grabs her. He raises a cleaver and calls her dead meat, veering back to strike. Internally, he's thinking he didn't want to do this, but she forced his hand. He's gonna be backed up for a few weeks thanks to this. Before the strike can land, the blade explodes. Everyone looks to see Alita, gun smoking in hand and looking very unimpressed. She just says to get lost. The bandits immediately comply. The chief doesn't even wait for his cronies to speed off. He does flip her off and tell her she hasn't seen the last of them, but we have. Alita turns her attention to the girl and her dog. The hound perks up and rushes to Alita with a wagging tail. She greets him with his name, Fury. The girl wants to know how Alita knows her dog's name. Alita simply smiles and asks if the girl wants her to guess her name too. Her name is Koyomi. That's right, we last saw her as a toddler back when Alita was still in the scrapyard. This is her, a teenager now, I guess. Later that night, Alita sits down to eat with the caravan and catches up with Koyomi, remarking on how big she's gotten. The girl doesn't remember Alita, but Shumira and her dad, the old bartender, talked about her a lot. Alita wants to know how the old gang is doing. Shumira apparently married that guy she was working with in the refugee camp and they have 8 children. She's still ditzy, but the volunteer brigade loves her for it. As for her father, the bartender went into debt to build a new bar and became a drunk. Apparently he took out his frustrations on Koyomi with his fists. He's a loser. That prompts Alita to ask why Koyomi left the scrapyard. It's dangerous out here, even with a hound like Fury at your side. The girl suggests that she just had a taste for adventure. Alita isn't buying it and guesses there was a broken heart involved. Koyomi sheepishly admits that's the truth. Lou appears to be enjoying eavesdropping. Koyomi suddenly realizes that her favorite program, Radio Chaos, is about to start, saying that actually her main reason for leaving the city was to meet her hero, Chaos. Alita hasn't heard of it, but the broadcast begins. Far away, a man with a cane stands on a ridge and gazes up at the night sky. He remarks that the ionosphere is clear now, so the waves will travel far. Someone calls out to him as Master Chaos. He returns to a massive trailer, maybe more of a mobile base, marked Radio Chaos. There's also an envoy of Barjack come to meet him. Chaos thanks the man for all the assistance Den has provided him, but he has no intention of being party to any Barjack propaganda. His music needs to transcend all boundaries and nurture the souls of all people. And so he begins to play, about what a dreamer needs to change the world and free his soul. More determination and a better reason than he. It may be too late, so they shouldn't waste a moment. Both Koyomi and Lou fall asleep listening to the song. Alita reflects that even in this world of filthy contradictions, she senses the people out there doing their best to live. She wants to watch over them. It's for that purpose that she wields her strength. Alita suggests she'd like to meet this Chaos fellow. Koyomi is all for it. The more the merrier. There she goes again, Lou reflects. Alita just wants to act as a protector to this little deviant gambler and soak in her admiration. Lou knows she should put her foot down and lay down the law, but she's far too agreeable. The caravan leader suggests that Chaos could have information about Den since the Barjack leader is supposedly a fan, so this could help their mission anyway. And so Alita joins the caravan, traveling inside the truck while Fury sleeps on her motorcycle, much to Lou's annoyance. Alita just finds it funny. Koyomi explains that Fury's just like that now that he's so old, must be ancient in dog years. Once he falls asleep, it's impossible to wake him up. Lou complains that Alita is having a dog ride the crown jewel of Zalemite science. When Koyomi asks about why the motorcycle is talking, Alita suggests that Lou actually is the motorcycle. The girl also tries to get Alita to gamble with the motorcycle and Fury as the bets, but Alita doesn't gamble for fun. Smart. The truck screeches to a sudden halt, sending Koyomi flying to the truck bed. Incensed, the girl squawks at the driver, but he's shaking in fear. Up ahead, there are 3 metal girders stuck upright with cars and dead bodies impaled upon them. Lou and Koyomi recoil at the sight of the bodies, though Alita is stoic. The driver explains that this display marks the border of Barjack territory. They are close to Chaos's place, but they should probably find an alternate route. Before they can make any decision, the ground gives way beneath the back wheels of the truck. The truck is fine, but Alita and Koyomi tumble out the back and into darkness. The young girl screams, and Alita shields her from running up against a wall. Luckily, their long fall is into water. A rushing subterranean stream takes them, whisking them far away. Up above, everyone, including the dog, looks on in alarm. Lou is beside herself, smacking the Alita proxy and worrying about what she should have done. Alita and Koyomi are tumbling around underwater, our heroine holding the young girl and shielding her from the battering current. Alita realizes that while she doesn't have to worry about drowning, Koyomi does. She quickly decides to electrolyze the water in her lungs to create oxygen. This is apparently something her tuned body can do, and she shares life-giving air via lip lock. Eventually, the furious current deposits the girls into a large chamber and onto a concrete ledge. Koyomi coughs, but is otherwise fine. Alita is happy to see that, but she's in rough shape herself. A wisp of smoke rises from her collar as she assures Koyomi that it's nothing too serious. Apparently her lungs aren't supposed to be used like that. She broke them. Koyomi is distressed. She begs Alita not to die and wants to make very clear that this isn't her fault. Alita tells her that she's going to fall into a coma mode right now to limit the damage to her brain. Koyomi will have to go by herself to find help. Carrying the cyborg on her back, Koyomi stumbles through what seems to be the ruins of a buried city. She isn't too pleased by the experience, though she hopes this will all make a good story later. Alita is soaking wet and heavy. This place is more of a maze than the slums of the scrapyard she grew up in. Out in the gloom, Koyomi spots a light. She's relieved to see another human being and calls out, but then more lights start to appear. Before she knows it, they are surrounded by men in ragged equipment and making frog noises of all things. The men are wearing old mining equipment. Koyomi is freaked out by the mole people and they start to reach for her. She falls and drops Alita, scrambling only to be nearly blindsided by something strange, a cyborg suspended from the roof shining bright lights on her. Koyomi gapes but then remembers Alita's sidearm. She pulls the gun and brandishes it, shouting at the mole people to stay back. The crowd and the cyborg cringe back away from her. Full of adrenaline and shaking like a leaf, Koyomi pulls the trigger, and nothing happens. The cyborg snatches the gun away from her while she's confused. The mole men surge forward, laying hands on Koyomi and Alita. Then there's an unexpected noise. An old elevator rumbles down into the cavern, carrying a single figure. As the man steps out, Koyomi is astonished to see the mole men bowing down before him. They clatter and clack their mining picks together and shout out. The cyborg points and makes loud noises. Koyomi finds herself being carried along, screaming in terror and crying. They put a headset over her ears, of all things. The man steps closer and touches her face. She hears a voice in her ear assuring her that there's no need to fear. He orders the mole men to step back because they're scaring her. They do so, and Koyomi finds herself sitting on the floor. She sniffles, but before Koyomi can say anything, the man summarizes their situation exactly, that they fell into a sinkhole after coming all this way to see him. The man introduces himself as Chaos and greets Koyomi by name. She's starstruck and wonders if he can read her mind. Chaos looks over to Alita and instantly identifies her as a cyborg. He takes Alita and Koyomi with him in the old elevator, explaining a bit about what all this is. The mole people cyborgs have lost interest in the girls and start digging into the rubble. Chaos explains that they're his servants. He has them digging for cultural artifacts from the old century, a box of which he has with him. It looks like a bunch of junk. When the elevator reaches the surface, the door opens to reveal a woman named Yasmin, who evidently also works for Chaos. He asks her to carry the box, and she throws Alita over her shoulder for good measure. She's quite strong. Chaos starts to explain his backstory. He was always weak and sickly. His mind works differently from others. You might call him a radio man. He hears and speaks with radio waves rather than sound. His vision only picks up infrared signals below the spectrum of visible light. All that is why he had to put a receiver on Koyomi's head to talk to her. As he leads them back to his mobile radio station, Chaos explains that he has one other ability. He tells Koyomi that non-living objects have a memory after a fashion. His hands can pick up those traces. This power is called psychometry, and it changed his life. All the songs he plays on his radio station are rock music restored from the grave of time through using this ability, all despite never studying music himself. He's able to extract information about performances through items that once belonged to the musicians and recreate them. He believes that objects can record human performances sort of like magnetic tape, therefore a magnetically attuned person can read them. This power is how he knew Koyomi's name, but as Chaos touches Alita's face, something odd happens. His hand seems to fall through her face and he screams. Bizarre visions appear before him. Mars and its moon, eyes, soldiers, and metal constructs. Chaos falls to the ground, gasping. Yasmin and Koyomi rush to him, but he has eyes only for Alita. He asks himself what on earth Alita, Yoko, really is. So, back on the road where Alita and Koyomi got dumped underground in the first place, those they left behind are worried. Fang is sniffing around, and poor Lou is crashing out. A tuned agent dying on her watch means she's going to lose her job and never work in the Bureau again. The caravanners are not quite so broken up. Lou reacts in alarm as they start to move off, but the driver just says sometimes you have to face facts. Life is so unlucky sometimes. Lou calls after them, calling them cowards and brutes. Is this what surface dwellers are like? Selfish, shallow, stupid, and unconcerned with anything that's before their eyes? This isn't going to help challenge her preconceived stereotypes. Her internal rant is interrupted by a loud noise and a light coming from around the bend where the truck disappeared. Lou moves to look and shouts at what she sees, the flaming remains of the vehicle and a vast convoy of cars. Barjack is here. As they impale the flaming wreckage on steel girders, a stunned Lou correctly identifies the massive silhouette among them as dead. Back with Koyomi and Alita, Koyomi is begging Chaos to help the warrior, but he doesn't want the trouble and plans to hand her over to Den. She calls him cruel, but he just sends her out. Koyomi makes her disappointment known. She thought Radio Chaos was better than this, but all the talk on his show about benevolence and altruism was a bunch of lies. Chaos doesn't respond directly to that, only tells Yasmin to play a recording for tonight's show. They depart and leave Chaos alone with Alita. The radio man is perplexed by her and anxious about why she has him so rattled. She isn't like anyone else he's met, so it is fear. He doesn't think so. He tells himself he shouldn't touch her or whatever it is will infect him too, but he can't seem to stop himself. Alita comes vaguely to awareness, aware that someone is near her, someone is reaching inside her chest and working on her insides. Though her eyes are closed, she sees a man with surgical gloves and rolled up sleeves. It's Ito. Alita is filled with joy that he came back to her and encourages him to take her apart. She grasps his hand and opens her eyes with a smile, addressing the doctor. It isn't Ito. Alita meets the shaded gaze of Chaos. The radio man notes that Alita is awake, and the cyborg girl instantly scoots away in surprise, even as her chest is still open from surgery. Chaos explains that he used his psychometric abilities to read her past experiences with the cyborg physician and fix her accordingly. This came at the cost of tearing his heart to pieces, and it's her fault. Alita stares at the man, uncomprehending, and he kisses her. The next chapter, Panzer Bride, finds Alita and Chaos in a very intimate position. Not only is he kissing her and holding her, not only is she naked, his hand is inside her open chest cavity. Oddly, she seems to be a little into that. I'll be honest with you, this is getting a bit weird for me. Chaos says that he loves her and explains that he's speaking directly through her circuits to communicate that. He calls her by the name Yoko, and that's enough to snap Alita to her senses. She shoves Chaos to the floor. Alita quickly regains her feet and closes up her chest. Chaos whines about being shoved, saying it was uncalled for and that she should be gentle because he's weak. Oh, boo-hoo. Alita just very curtly thanks him for the hard work in fixing her and puts her clothes on. He suggests he has a better outfit for her, though Alita is more concerned with re-establishing her connection to Tuned. Chaos reveals that won't work, since he disabled her tuned circuits. So, now that she's free, wouldn't she wear this dress for him? Alita looks on with surprise as Chaos asks her to forget the past and live in peace with him, addressing her again as Yoko. Coming on rather strong for a guy she just met and introduced himself by groping her internal organs, huh? Meanwhile, Yasmin is entertaining Koyomi as she sets up the recorded broadcast. She assures Koyomi that, despite his whims, Chaos wouldn't hurt a fly. Koyomi seems to accept this and asks Yasmin to do a horoscope reading for Alita. Chaos has his psychometry, but Yasmin is a fortune teller by trade. She claims her readings usually come true as she lays out an array. Yasmin says that Alita's physical damage will recover soon, but in the near future she sees an ill omen, a failed plan leading to separation, or an omen of death. Koyomi is confused, but then Chaos rushes up the stairs, sweating bullets. They don't have time to contemplate this before Alita comes up the stairs, wearing a wedding dress. I guess she decided to humor him. She does look nice in a dress. Koyomi is a fan of this development and puts Chaos back in her good books. Yasmin mutters that's the dress Chaos made by hand. Alita just wants to talk to Chaos, who looks like he's hyperventilating. She explains very carefully that while in the past she thought of Tuned as being subject to Zalem's whims, now she feels it could be a bridge to something better, a bridge that connects Zalem and the surface. Therefore, she asks him to reactivate her Tuned circuits. Chaos, clearly overwrought, asks her if she hates him that much, which confuses her. He shouts, demanding to know why she won't be with him. Chaos flies into a full-blown tantrum, swinging his cane to smash things, tears and snot running from his face as he asks why he isn't good enough. The three girls stare and cringe at the display. At length, Yasmin tries to calm him down as he rants about Zalem and the surface, trying to stop him from smashing the equipment at least. Chaos just keeps ranting about how it's all meaningless and asking how Alita could trade his love for all of that. Yasmin just tells him to stop before he hurts himself. Alita intervenes, placating him. She says she'll stay with him if he'll just calm down. Chaos questions her, but Alita assures him she will. Internally, she apologizes to Figure 4 and promises that she isn't cheating on him. This is just a plan. Strategy. As for Koyomi, well, her hero worship of Chaos has been completely dashed. Sometime later, Chaos is driving the mobile radio station. When Alita asks where they're going, the radio man reveals that even though he's now coerced her into staying with him, he plans to help her find Ito. He plans to ask his father about him. That surprises Alita, but Chaos reveals that his father is someone Alita knows well. Desty Nova. While the cyborg girl is in shock, Chaos goes on. His father is a great man, but also quite mad. It's hard to have a father like him. Chaos hasn't seen him in years. Alita starts to wonder if this all could be a trap by Nova, but she doesn't think Chaos is putting on an act. The mobile radio station crunches up a ridge and reaches the top to meet the glare of bright lights. They're all blinded for a moment, but the outline of cars and a looming figure resolve from the radiance. Den and Barjack await. Surprisingly, Chaos tells Alita not to worry. He says he and Den have been pen pals for years. He doesn't believe that the Barjack leader will allow him to come to harm. This doesn't seem to reassure her too much. She's sweating bullets. The radio man goes outside to address Den, asking for safe passage. Den advances in his massive centaur body, telling Chaos that this will be a night worth memorializing, that he should rejoice, for the time has come for him to return to his rightful ruler in body and mind. Chaos insists that he cannot aid Barjack. He maintains neutrality, as he has told Den countless times. Den explodes. "Fool, you call yourself neutral while you harbor one of Zalem's hounds?" Everyone is surprised. How could he know that? Den insists that Chaos has no choice, that he must bend the knee, submitting himself and Zalem's Angel of Death to the King of Lightning, as is proper. The radio man starts hyperventilating and shaking, falling to his knees. He gasps that he won't give her to Den, but the Barjack leader calls him a fool for thinking he can resist while he can barely stand. Chaos collapses. Alita snatches the veil from her head and tells everyone to run while she arms up to hold them off. Alita leaps from the massive vehicle. Koyomi exclaims, remembering Yasmin's reading. A failed plan leads to an omen of death. Den commands his Barjack bandits to advance and not let them escape. Alita stands alone in their path, leveling her sidearm in challenge. But remember, that little gun is actually quite overpowered. It can punch through titanium-reinforced armor at a great distance, so it shreds through the oncoming car bodies with shocking ease. One car soars past her, a flaming wreck, then two before Den raises a hand and calls on his men to wait. The Barjack soldiers stop their vehicles. Alita hasn't even moved. Den says that he knows the tuned circuits that shackled her have been severed. Alita will now be part of Den's forces and use her power to bring down Zalem instead. He tells her to join him, addressing her by the name Yoko. That puts Alita off her game. She starts sweating. How could he know so much about her? She insists that her name is Alita and not to call her by her old name. Den simply says that the past is written in her flesh and blood, indicating the path she has traveled. Deep in her heart, she embraces hatred for Zalem, just like him. Genuinely shaken now, Alita lowers her weapon. She has one question. Does Den really think he can topple Zalem? He says of course, and reveals his plan. The centerpiece is a gargantuan 80-centimeter railway gun, which is almost complete. This cannon is powerful enough to reach the 4,000-meter elevation of the shaft above Zalem with 80-centimeter armor-piercing shells. Shocked, Alita demands to know if this madman has any idea what that would do. If he breaks the shaft, then Zalem will fall onto the scrapyard. Den knows exactly what he's doing. The fall of Zalem would impact the surface with force exceeding several hundred megatons, cleansing the scrapyard and its factories from the surface without a trace. Thus the new age, their age, could begin. Alita looks at Den in horror as the Barjack leader continues. The day must come for child to kill parent, for people to kill king, for man to kill God. This is no mere expression of envy. It must be done, or you shall never walk free on your own two legs. Alita admits that she's wished more than once that Zalem would fall from the sky, but she has always feared placing that hatred front and center in her actions. After seeing Den, she now understands why. Alita raises her gun once more. Ugly or not, she says, the scrapyard is her second home. As an individual, as a human being, she will put a stop to Den's barbarity. He accepts her challenge mockingly, telling her to crush his aims and reverse the tides of time, if she can. Elsewhere, the Radio Chaos station is speeding away from Barjack. Koyomi is worried for Alita, but Yasmin simply says that she will die as she foretold. However, Yasmin seems more wrapped up in envy. She resents Alita for rejecting Chaos's proposal, even after putting on that dress that Yasmin had yearned to wear herself for so long. Chaos is passed out inside. Koyomi doesn't want to entertain this and leaps from the moving vehicle to Yasmin's shock. It's painful, but she rolls to a stop, not too worse for wear. She correctly surmises that her former radio god idol, Master Chaos, is a creep. Back in the fight, Alita is doing her best to avoid Den's giant spear thrusts. She fires at his face, but even her gun doesn't have much effect. She leaps and bounds over his attacks even as they tear up the landscape and start to tatter her dress, until she has a near miss that buries the spear tip right below her feet. Den rips the spear upward, sending Alita flying head over heels. She slams into a ruined car so hard she leaves a deep impression in it. Alita is grudgingly impressed. Den doesn't simply let his size and strength do the work. His timing and focus, that's what the characters call ki in this setting, are so sharp that Alita doubts she could take him out from a distance with her gun. Den compliments her evasion and her ki, but warns her that relying on her ki will not be enough. There is something faster and more fleeting than ki, the concept of kizashi, of premonition. No matter how fast and wicked her ki attacks are, they mean nothing when he has already read her actions ahead of time. Alita laughs. It's been over 10 years since she felt something like this, encountering a worthy opponent in an unexpected place. But she is no longer wagering her life alone. She can't afford to lose. Alita braces herself, then flings her gun far into the air, surprising Den. Alita takes advantage of his distraction, launching herself forward and whipping out her Damascus blade. It's time to give Den a taste of true Panzerkunst. The Barjack leader mocks her feint and thrusts his spear, which Alita dodges by a hair's breadth. She executes a spinning maneuver, using momentum to wind herself up and around Den's spear. Alita launches into the air, coming face to face with the Barjack leader. Her gun falls back towards her as Alita rises. She snatches it from the air and blasts Den right in the eye at point-blank range. He rears back from the attack, but that wasn't enough to take him down. Den headbutts Alita and hits her with the shaft of his spear on her way to the ground. She loses her grip on the Damascus blade and her gun is shattered. Alita hits the ground hard and rolls to a heap, cursing Den's persistence. The Barjack leader mocks her for thinking removing his eye would assure her victory, announcing her death as he levels his spear at her prone form. And Alita is out of moves here. She thinks she's about to die, and thinks of Ito and Figure. Den attacks, rocks shatter, but Alita is no longer there. She's been whisked away to safety by Lu, controlling the tuned motorcycle remotely. The operator is very happy to have found Alita, who is surprised. Very quickly, they reactivate Alita's tuned circuits through a direct connection to the bike. Lu wants to ask what's happened, but they need to beat Den first. As for Alita, she's thrilled her systems are fully restored and she's ready for round 2. Meanwhile, Koyomi is stumbling through the Badlands, determined to get back to Alita. Thankfully, her cyberdog Fury finds her. Koyomi isn't worried about herself as long as she has Fury with her, but she is concerned about Alita, so they hide themselves behind a rock to watch her confrontation with Den. Den is disgusted, or at least annoyed, at Alita regaining the assistance of Zalem. Miss Lou Collins is psyching herself up, realizing this Den is the evil mastermind they've come to defeat. He was tormenting her sweet little Alita, but now that Lou is on the case, his ass is grass. Alita asks her to please take this seriously. Lou insists that she is serious. They'll just whip out their ultimate weapon and wrap this up all at once. With the click of a button, the Gabriel Oversight System opens a panel and drops a large cannon from orbit. It even has maneuvering fins that help bring it straight to Alita. It attaches itself to the motorcycle, the solenoid quench gun. It even has a mechanical eye in the scope for targeting. Recognizing the danger, Den charges Alita at full speed. The Gabriel fires a laser down to a receiver on the solenoid gun, charging the weapon. Charging complete, the weapon locks onto the advancing Den. Then Alita pulls the trigger and fires. The cannon blasts through the air and tears a ragged hole through Den's side. His arm is simply gone. Shrapnel from the blasts rips through Barjack vehicles, causing several secondary explosions that send car bodies flying. Alita is suitably impressed by the weapon. The recoil forces her and the motorcycle back a foot. The solenoid quench gun is a magnetic launcher that fires armor-piercing solenoid rounds at 5 kilometers per second. It needs power provided by the Gabriel Oversight drone to fire and provide aim assistance. The Barjack bandits move to protect and shield Den, but he orders them to stay back. They must go and complete the railgun to bring Zalem crashing down. Alita, Lu, and Koyomi look on as the tearful bandits leave and Den prepares to sacrifice himself. Den raises his voice to the heavens, proclaiming that his iron will is immortal and will last long after he crumbles to dust. He calls on the masters of Zalem observing this battle from on high to hear him. Then Alita fires again. The second shot blows apart Den's torso where it meets his centaur body. The bandits cry out as their leader falls. Koyomi looks on in shock. Lu is gritting her teeth and shaking Alita's mini-avatar. The villain isn't supposed to give moving speeches. She tells Alita to finish him off so they can enjoy their tea time. Den is broken, but still alive, and he speaks directly to Lu. Zalemite, hear my voice through the Angel of Death's ears. It speaks the anger of the people of the soil. It is the rage of the innocent who have been crushed under the heel of Zalem and its factories, and live through its abuses for centuries. All of this devastation and stagnation that chokes the earth, all the hatred and sadness that exists is for the sake of Zalem. Never forget it, not until the day that you pay the price for stealing our skies from us. Den's words strike a chord with Koyomi. Lu tries to dismiss his words as all talk. Alita focuses on Den and asks him who he is, where he came from. Den only says that this body is but a shell. She cannot kill the real him this way. So he tells Alita to fire again, savor the taste of temporary victory until they meet again. He uses her original name once again, Yoko. Alita obliges, taking aim. But Koyomi rushes out ahead. She puts herself in front of Den and throws her hands in the air, shouting at Alita not to shoot. The cyborg girl shouts at Koyomi to get out of the way, but the girl shouts back that it's all Zalem's fault. Koyomi announces that she's going to follow Den's lead and join Barjack. Alita recoils in confusion. In the start of the next chapter, Fork in the Road, we see Alita's memories of Koyomi from saving her from Makaku as an infant, to her toddlerhood playing with cyborg dogs, to the bold young girl standing before her now, insisting that she's joining Barjack. Taking her finger off the trigger, Alita exclaims at her not to do it. She nervously tells Koyomi that Den's the bad guy, so she should stop being ridiculous and get away from there. Be a good girl. Koyomi shouts back at Alita not to treat her like a little kid. She's old enough to decide good from bad on her own, and after hearing Den's speech, she sees the light. If those are just normal people living in Zalem instead of all-knowing gods, then they have to change how the world works. Lu is shocked and uncomfortable at this proclamation. Den is silent. Alita is angry. She trembles and shouts at Koyomi with rage in her voice, "Don't talk to me about changing the world as if you have any idea what that means, you ignorant little child." Koyomi recoils, not expecting that from Alita, who goes on and takes aim. She says that this isn't a game. If Koyomi doesn't move from that spot in 3 seconds, she's going to open fire. Even Lu is taken aback by this and warns Alita that the girl will be hurt if she does that. Alita just tells her to shut up and starts counting. 1. Koyomi decides to call Alita's bluff. She sits down cross-legged in front of Den and bets that Alita won't shoot. She's serious about this. Lu decides the girl must be a Sagittarius. Alita continues her countdown. 2. At this, Den starts to laugh. He says he did not expect to be aided by such a tiny stalwart. He picks her up with his remaining hand and tells her she's free to join. Welcome to the Barjack Rebellion. Surprisingly, this makes Alita laugh. She points the cannon away from Koyomi and Den. She concedes. Koyomi has won her bet. If this is what she's chosen for herself, Alita can't stop her. The girl grins and tells Alita not to waste time worrying about her. All roads lead somewhere. Alita turns and starts off on the motorcycle, laughing that she'll have to settle her score with Den some other time, but then that face becomes serious and she points at Koyomi. Alita warns that next time she won't hesitate to shoot. Koyomi frowns and starts sweating anxiously. Then the cyborg warrior is off, speeding away on her cycle with a stony expression on her face. Lu is moody in the aftermath of the encounter, replaying Koyomi's words in her head as she watches Alita's progress on the screen. Before we move on, there's a little note in the page explaining the name. Barjack derives from Bashaku, a class of horse-riding cargo haulers in feudal Japan. Like the Bashaku, Barjack were originally rural ferrymen that started a rebellion. But you may be wondering, where have Chaos and Yasmin gotten to? Let's check in on them now. They've driven the mobile radio station into a canyon, and Barjack doesn't seem to be pursuing. Yasmin hopes Koyomi is alright, but her priority is making sure Chaos is safe. The radio man regains consciousness and bolts upright. Yasmin tells him not to worry, as she's put plenty of distance between them and Den. She thought the Barjack leader was a reasonable man, but he resorted to violence. Now they're on their way to Nova's lab, where they should be safe with Chaos's father should Den come after them. When he asks about Yoko, Yasmin informs him that she remained behind to hold off pursuers, Koyomi leaving the vehicle as well. He does not take that well. Chaos can't believe she left his beloved Yoko behind and insists they go back for her. He reaches for the wheel, but Yasmin shouts at him and slaps him. He's stunned and falls to the ground. Yasmin demands Chaos cease this stubbornness and listen to reason. His life is not his alone to waste. Chaos sulks that she didn't have to hit him, but she just orders him to repair the equipment for their usual nightly broadcast. Yasmin considers the past. Ever since Chaos's psychometry ability manifested in childhood, she's always seen endless possibilities in his future. He has the ability to recreate knowledge from the past of anything he touches. Radio Chaos is just the beginning. He has the power to change the whole world, so he must become stronger. Much stronger. Thinking to himself, Chaos is aware of Yasmin's hopes for him, but doesn't think he's capable of living up to them. She thinks too highly of him. Just then, his contemplation is interrupted by a hatch in the roof opening up. It was closed just a moment ago. Suddenly, Chaos is grabbed from behind. Cowled, ninja-like figures have infiltrated the station. One throws a wire around Yasmin's neck as Chaos screams for her. Blood sprays in the cabin. Rain falls in the canyon, running over the rocks and filling the tire tracks left by the heavy vehicle. Station Radio Chaos has crashed, rolling over and smashed on the rocks. Alita looks on in horror, having caught up with them. Lou wonders if it could have been an accident, but Alita doesn't buy it. Something is wrong here. Arming herself with the Damascus blade, Alita approaches the broken trailer. She finds half a severed head and other carnage inside. Lou and Alita quickly identify the cyborg ninjas, probably the same ones that attacked Alita at the very start of this arc. Alita is confused about who could have killed them all. They're battle cyborgs after all, and the cuts are flawless. Emerging from the trailer, Alita spies Chaos, kneeling beside a body. He's staring numbly into the middle distance. Alita, who apparently remembers that kiss with some fondness, is glad he's alive. He has a sword sticking out of the ground next to him, a katana, which prompts Alita to ask if he's the one that killed the ninjas. All he can say is that Yasmin is dead. They take some measures to pay her respect. Alita takes off the dress that Yasmin so desired to wear and put it on her, covering her head in a veil. Alita remarks that, despite the ragged condition of the dress, she still bet Yasmin looked better in it than she did. After some time, Alita suggests that Chaos should get out of the rain if he doesn't want to get sick, prodding him that they should go. He is distraught. His home is destroyed, his antennas are broken, he's finished. Alita exhales. Lou thinks this guy is a bit of a pushover, handsome though. Alita confirms that he's as weak as he looks, though he has the fantastical power of psychometry at his disposal. She thinks that's how he beat the ninjas. He was able to recreate the movements of some ancient samurai while touching that katana. Lou is impressed, but Alita complains that he hasn't used that power to grow as a person. It annoys her to see people passively living off their talent. While Alita is distracted, Chaos's head abruptly snaps up, his sclera turning black. He looks to her as she's suggesting giving Yasmin a proper burial. She turns and barely misses losing her head as his sword catches on the edge of the Damascus blade. Alita gawks at Chaos, standing blade in hand and prepared to continue the attack. He doesn't respond to her, and she has to backflip out of the way of another strike, which splits the rock behind her. Alita is stunned that a flesh-and-blood person can pull off attacks like that. She tries to get him to stop and asks Chaos what's going on. The man before her says that Chaos is sleeping in here and jabs a thumb at his chest. Alita is stunned because, remember, Chaos communicates through radio waves, but this man just spoke with his voice. The man laughs and says there's no reason to hide it any longer. He pulls open his shirt to reveal a device embedded in his chest, proclaiming that he is none other than Den. The large body she's been fighting until now is nothing more than a slave unit controlled with this EPR transmitter in his chest. An EPR transmitter is apparently a transmitter that utilizes quantum entanglement. He goes on to explain that Chaos is nothing more than a roommate to him, one that doesn't even know that he's there. He's a frail, bitter man allowed to live for Den's benefit, but it's Den's turn in the spotlight now. Alita realizes that this must be how Den knew so much about her, including calling her Yoko. Now that she knows his secret, Den says she must die. Alita realizes she must approach this carefully. Chaos is her only clue towards finding Nova, and more importantly, finding Ito. Den goads her, asking why she does not draw her blade now that he's in her sight. He calls her weak and naive. Despite her impressive mastery of Panzerkunst, her weakness in finishing the fight nearly cost her life, and that weakness is because she's a woman. In that moment, she got greedy and clung to life, making her sloppy. Alita is a bit annoyed now, but her response is measured. She says he may be right about that. It's true that she doesn't go mad the way she once did. She supposes it's because she got the tiniest taste of that sweetness found in the fruit of life. Now that she has that fruit in hand, she will not let anyone have it. Alita refuses to die and draws her Damascus blade. Chaos scowls and says that fear of death makes her a failure as a warrior. Den reveals that he does not have the power of psychometry, but all the information read by Chaos is compiled within him. The previous owner of this katana was the famed and feared Tachibana Ryukisai, and now his skill shall bury her. They stand off for a moment, but there are more hazards in this canyon than the combatants. Lu buzzes in to warn Alita of an oncoming flash flood raging through the canyon. Neither combatant reacts. As the churning waters bear down upon them, Den strikes and Alita flips over his attack before both are consumed by the flood. Lu is distressed, but Alita's arm emerges to pull herself and Chaos up onto the bank. She simply says, "I won." Before we continue with the arc, the author had another of those informational sections he likes to use to explain world-building details. Apparently, not even Nova can adequately explain exactly how Chaos's power works, but the best theory is that the emotional energy released by a human is carved into an object as a kind of electromagnetic pattern. When the psychometrist touches that object, the electromagnetic patterns of his brain resonate with this pattern somehow, allowing him to visualize the information or synchronize with it or channel it somehow. He has an alternate theory about how it works, involving scalar electromagnetic waves emitted by the human brain, but at this point we're getting into the weeds of a pseudoscientific discussion that really doesn't matter for the story. Amusingly, we find out that amongst Chaos' psychometric artifact collection, he has not only an ancient katana, but also a synthesizer that belonged to Alan Parsons, which is apparently the source of his musical talent. We move into the next volume of Battle Angel Alita with our next chapter, The Final Broadcast. With his large body repaired, Den has led Barjack forces on a rampage, overwhelming the factory's defenses left, right, and center. They've conquered 14 out of the 29 factory farms, mostly those to the southwest of the scrapyard, as Barjack forces mass for a direct attack on Zalem. He is closer to his goal than ever, yet Den is disquieted. Alita knows his secret, yet for the past 10 days she has done nothing. Chaos, his true body, is still alive and defenseless. And he does not know why. He wonders if perhaps the fickle woman has fallen for Chaos. In the meantime, the underworld dealer turned factory administrator Vector met with Den to attempt peace negotiations in the hopes of protecting his own profits. Vector tried everything, listing every compromise he could devise, but Den was only interested in one thing: the utter destruction of Zalem. The interests of the scrapyard were of no interest to him, so negotiations failed and he ordered them killed. Vector survived thanks to the intervention of a young girl, Koyomi. She promises to spare his life under one condition: that he'll evacuate everyone living in the scrapyard to a safe location so that Zalem can fall without hurting them. However, the factory wouldn't let Vector do that. They feared they would never get their labor force back if they dispersed into the wilderness. Thus life continued in the scrapyard as it had for centuries, with corruption and rot, with a steady diet of violence and bustle, all entirely ignorant of the approaching threat. As for Miss Lou Collins, she's walking in a park in Zalem, lamenting her lack of sleep. In order to help Alita and Chaos, Lou switched out the data from their encounter, revealing that Chaos was Den's true form. Thus the secret has been kept, but she'll be more than fired if she's ever caught. Lou isn't even sure why she did it. Surely not just to be better friends with Alita. She looks out at the buildings of her home and wonders just what Zalem is. She enters the GIB office and is shocked by how crowded it is. No longer is she the lone operator in a basement, and apparently all this was moved in literally overnight. Lou bids a bright and cheerful hello to her new co-workers. Some of them give her a surprised look and then very pointedly ignore her. Lou is flustered by the attitude, which turns to anger when she notices that someone is using her console. She worries for a moment that they caught her data tampering, but the director appears to say this is simply a rearrangement. Her station is now in a rather shabby-looking corner filled with boxes. Lou is glad not to have been caught, but this change still seems foreboding. She also asks after Dr. Russell, but Eisenberg simply says the affable doctor has been released. Out far in the wasteland, Alita is working up a sweat. She appears to be erecting a makeshift antenna for some sort of radio transmitter. The cyborg girl addresses Chaos as she works, musing that the thing about humans is that you can't help but want to live for someone else. Everyone wants a true family. She realizes Chaos isn't listening before she can get any further into it. The radio man is lying on his side in an emergency shelter, looking emaciated and traumatized. He has no memory of Den's fight with Alita, but touching the katana told him everything. The idea that Den, the very man responsible for starting the storm of violence that took Yasmin's life, resides inside him is clearly hitting him hard. He thought this metal plate in his chest his father implanted was a life-saving device for his illness, yet it seems to be the very thing that unleashed Den. Nonetheless, he can't mope about forever, as Alita tells him his transmitter is all ready. Radio Chaos rises from the ashes for one final broadcast. Alita tells him to shape up, since this was his idea, for Radio Chaos to go out with a bang. Not that you could tell, since he's shaking like a leaf. Alita and Lou have their concerns. If Chaos's guilt leads him to do something suicidal, like reveal he was the true form of Den, their hard work would be for naught. It would signal total mental defeat for Chaos, a man that, despite his creep behavior, Alita does want to believe in. However, if he does reveal the truth, Alita would be left with little choice but to cut him in two. Chaos begins his transmission with an apology for being an escapist, an observer that made ambiguity the aesthetic of his position. Up until today, he was terrified of staining his own hands. He grew up in the scrapyard, looking up at Zalem. As a child, his father gave him an egg in a bird cage. The cage was sealed so that it would never open, nor allow him to reach inside it. In time, the egg hatched and a cute baby bird emerged. He had never seen a bird before, and it fascinated him. In time, he could not resist the urge to touch it and pet this precious thing. The bird flew away, and was immediately shot out of the sky by a factory netman. His father laughed at him for being stupid enough to release it. Didn't he know flying beneath Zalem was a crime? Chaos blamed himself. Alita looks on as Chaos tells this story, clearly caught up in his tale and where he's going with it. The radio man summons the courage to say that Zalem's existence is wrong. Human beings are not meant to live this way. Even then, they must not fire their cannons at Zalem. Koyomi and Den are listening to this, the latter remarking that Chaos has at last awakened to the truth. Chaos goes on, saying that if Zalem were to fall, they might build a town on 1,000,000 corpses, but the history built with bloodshed would not come to an end. Den objects that history is bloodshed. Chaos continues that his fingers know all, that there is no soil on this planet that has never been wet with blood and tears. If sin and sadness are to be cleansed from the world, it must be done through creation and peaceful accord. Nothing else. Somewhere, Desty Nova is very happy with his son's sentiment. What he's talking about is defying karma, exactly the subject of the mad professor's research. He's so proud. Elsewhere, a familiar figure listens as Chaos pledges to live his life for this cause. If a doctor is needed, his fingers will make him a doctor. If an architect is needed, he'll be an architect. If a leader is needed, he'll be a leader. If a gentle hand is needed to comfort a child, he will provide that hand, until the day their stack of pebbles finally reaches up to Zalem. Until that day. And so the broadcast was over. Alita considers it a statement of intent to be superhuman, to consume both good and evil, both joy and sin, and continue the journey. She offers Chaos an approving thumbs up, at last understanding the possibilities and heavy price of the power of psychometry. The next chapter is Testament, skipping ahead some time after the broadcast. Factory Farm 21 is one of the farms that's been occupied by Barjack for 2 years now. It's where Alita and Chaos hope to find Nova. She questions him about how sure he is, which he takes as a moment to make a statement. He thanks her for giving him courage. She's a bit surprised as he explains that he has further to grow after that big statement. Then he grabs her by the shoulder and starts interrogating her about how she feels about him. Needless to say, Alita has no patience for it, and Lou is just embarrassed by the whole affair. Alita gives him a good smack for not knowing how to pick time and place, remarking that she thought better of him after the broadcast. Plus, she already has a man in her life. He knows that, which makes her think about just how much about her he learned with his psychometry. Flustered, Alita chases Chaos around, demanding to know just how much he knows about her love life. Lou tries to remind them they're in enemy territory. Chaos becomes more serious and admits that Nova isn't at this location, but the man Alita's been looking for is. Alita realizes he's telling her that Ido is here. He explained that he learned this from Den's metal puppet with his psychometry abilities when he and Den were switched. Alita doesn't know what to say. Lou is happy for her, but Alita just asks if she can turn off communications for half a day so nobody figures out she's tuned. Lou happily obliges. After a less conspicuous change of clothes, Alita sets out to explore this desert oasis. She isn't exactly bursting with excitement, though. She's anxious, partly because, knowing Nova, there's a non-zero chance that when she finds Ido, he'll have some sort of weird worm body like Makaku. Alita prays that Ido will be just as he was before. Just then, Ido himself rushes right by her. Alita gawks as the doctor rushes to the side of a collapsed man, then swoons as she recognizes his scent and is overwhelmed. Flushed and flustered, Alita hides and clutches her chest. She's totally not ready for this. What's she even supposed to say, finding him after a decade? She peeks around to see Ito furiously working to save his cyborg patient. He's the same old Ito, gentle, tall, and warm, which makes Alita wonder why he didn't try to go back to the scrapyard or even try to contact her. He's just been living out here in the country. Ito is preoccupied, but the nurse helping him catches sight of Alita peering at them, though she doesn't draw attention to her. Back outside the farm, Lou is chatting with Chaos. She says that she was really moved by his final broadcast and has been losing sleep thinking about how she can contribute to peaceful understanding. Chaos acknowledges that it's easier said than done, and he doesn't intend to be a man that's more talk than action. With that, he just starts to drive off, to Lou's surprise. Chaos says he needs to settle things with his father alone. If fate wills it, they'll meet again. Lou protests that it's too dangerous, but Chaos is undeterred. He says that his psychometry is an empty vessel. Anything can fit inside it, but on its own, it's empty. Chaos wonders if his love for Alita is nothing more than another borrowed emotion picked up by his power. Even if it is, the pain he feels is real. He asks Lou to tell Alita goodbye for now, until he builds an identity of his own. Back on the farm, Alita is still hiding and still flustered. She missed her chance to talk to Ito. Someone taps her on the shoulder. It's Ito's new assistant, asking her what she's doing. Seeing this as a great opportunity, Alita explains that she's an old friend of Dr. Ito's from the scrapyard. The assistant introduces herself as Kana and leads Alita into an alley. As soon as our heroine notices, Kana whistles. A bunch of tough-looking cyborgs show up as the assistant rounds on Alita. With an unwavering, cheerful expression, Kana says that she'd appreciate it if Alita packed up and left without another word. Her expression shifts to a more somber one, and she explains that they aren't letting anyone from Ito's past come to see him. This attempt to strong-arm Alita goes about the way you would expect, with cyborgs going flying into the lake. They go hurtling into the water one by one to the bemusement of the townsfolk. Alita observes that these guys seem to be pure amateurs, seemingly not Barjack either. Some of the goons complain to Kana that this is so tough, not like she said it would be. One of them pulls a gun, but the nurse kicks him and insists on no firearms. Instead, Kana compliments Alita and says she'll have to handle her herself. Alita is getting annoyed now, but Kana is able to match her kick with one of her own. It's a shock, but both kicks connect. Kana takes a hit to the face while hitting Alita right in the center of her chest. They both fall to the ground in what seems to be an even fight. Alita is impressed and prepared to go all out, but Kana sits on the ground and starts bawling about how that hurt. Ito appears, loudly demanding a stop to the fighting. He reprimands Kana for getting into fights and asks Alita if she's alright, but when she tries to get him to recognize her, he shows no recognition. Kana interrupts the awkward moment by throwing an arm around Alita's shoulder and claiming that they were practicing some of their old capoeira moves together, from which Ito assumes they're old friends. That makes Alita freeze up, even as the nurse tells her to play along if she cares about Ito. After 10 years of searching for him, now that she's finally found him, Ito has no memories of her. Later that night, Alita was invited back to Ito's home clinic for dinner with him and Kana. It all seems friendly enough, but Ito talks like someone that's never been to the scrapyard before. Alita is distracted, recalling how Kana explained the entire situation to her. Kana explains that she met Dr. Ito while working at Professor Nova's lab. She was told that if any of Ito's old acquaintances were to show up, she was supposed to show them the contents of this disc. Instead, she tried to drive Alita off, which was her mistake. The disc contains Ito's own testament from 5 years ago. The video showed Alita a very familiar Dr. Ito, and it was quite painful to watch. Ito appears on screen with a heavily bandaged head. He says that he's on the border between sanity and madness at the moment. He was killed and recreated with Nova's technology. If anything, he feels younger than before. Nova wanted him to be a lab assistant, but Ito fought against his experiments. Then Nova said, "If you learn the Zalemite secret, you'll change your mind." That makes Ito tremble and laugh hysterically. He says that now that he knows the secret, he understands the motive behind Nova's experiments all too well, but he feels his mind might not be able to withstand the weight of it. He doesn't think he can be the old Ito again. Tears running down his face, Ito says goodbye to the scrapyard and his loved ones, for he has decided to erase his memories rather than live with this knowledge. He tells Alita to find happiness for his sake and say goodbye. Alita leaves after dinner with little fanfare, despite an offer to stay the night, simply telling Ito that she has people waiting for her. With a simple "so long," Alita departs. Ito frowns after her, remarking that he doesn't think she has a place to go. She seemed very sad. Kana frowns, but says nothing. Alita walks along and looks at the stars, pondering her regrets. There were so many things she wanted to tell Ito when she found him. The painful things and happy things, so many experiences. She'd wanted him to see how she'd grown and be proud of her. None of that can happen now. Heartbroken, Alita thinks about her Dr. Ito and cries. We jump ahead sometime later as Alita continues her mission in Inheriting the Beast. She's speeding through the desert. Lou explains that they'll be at their destination in 30 minutes. Lou notes that Alita seems distracted, though our heroine just says she's lost in thought. They've been chasing after chaos for 7 hours now. They're unlikely to catch up at this point, but hopefully nothing bad will happen. They are family. Their destination is Professor Nova's lab, which is located under Mount Norad, some 700 kilometers northwest of Farm 21. It's a repurposed military facility from the old century, now known as the Granite Inn. Lou is all fired up about this. It's time for the showdown against the wicked Professor Nova. Alita seems to enjoy taking the wind out of Lou's sails at this point. They're broken from their musings when a cloaked figure leaps out in front of Alita. She skids to a stop and draws the Damascus blade as the figure flips away and lands in a crouch. Her goggles fall off her face as if cleanly sliced in two. Alita stares in astonishment because she swears this shrimp just performed Panzerkunst acrobatics. It pulls down its hood to reveal Alita's own face? What? Alita reflexively pulls her sidearm and pulls the trigger. Honestly, a fairly sensible reaction to being ambushed by a doppelganger. However, the gun simply clicks and does not fire. Her double tells Alita not to bother. Tuned equipment cannot be used to attack other tuned. Our heroine splutters in confusion and demands an explanation from Lou, but the operator is just as confused. Director Eisenberg chimes in to ask if she really doesn't get it yet, then explains. This is Tuned AR Series 2, their mass production unit, upgraded from Alita's A1. This tuned body has the same capabilities as Alita. The molecular computer she has for a brain possesses a digitized record of 10 years of Alita's combat data, and unlike Alita, she is completely loyal. She's the ideal combat android. "Screw you," Alita shouts at the director for thinking he could make a cheap imitation of her without her say-so. Eisenberg doesn't think she understands. This was the intended form of tuned all along. Back when he rescued her from factory disposal, he did so because he wanted battle software, the sort a living body and mind would possess. She provided the sample for that data, nothing more. And what a sample she turned out to be. He had to bring in Dr. Russell and Miss Collins explicitly for their personalities in the hopes that they would tame her. Russell had to be let go because he was against the project. Lou notices the other operators in the office giving her askance looks and smirking at her. Alita contemplates that she's been dancing in Zalem's palm this whole time, all of those death-defying missions for this purpose. The director announces that she will now perform the final test of the AR replicas, an examination of their fighting abilities. Incensed by this unforgivable betrayal, Alita tears off her cloak and tuned armor. She's determined to defend her name and honor. This stupid puppet will not replace her. A2's operator orders the android to begin, but the replica has a question first. Alita claims that she's just an imitation. AR2 smirks and asks if she can be the real one and Alita the imitation if she wins. Angered, Alita charges in, but the android dodges. Instead, Alita's blow shatters a nearby rock formation. They launch into a furious exchange of blows, acrobatically maneuvering around the rough terrain. The android is able to keep up with Alita shockingly well as they clash in midair. This feels like living out a nightmare for Alita. Her Panzerkunst is intended for helping her take out opponents bigger than her. It isn't well suited for an enemy exactly the same size as her. Lou exclaims that they're evenly matched in power, speed, and technique. Neither will win at this rate. This is all within Eisenberg's expectations. The real fight begins now. The exchange of blows continues, with Alita becoming agitated by the copycat routine. She feints, breaking the rhythm of attack to come up from below to slam her elbow into the android's face. That was the Panzerkunst technique Einsatzrhythmen, and Alita thinks that felt like a solid hit, a concussion at least. Lou cheers, but the director and AR2's operator are unperturbed. Alita recoils as the android recovers, revealing a very Terminator-esque metal skull beneath her ruined face. The melee begins again with an exchange of identical palm strikes. Alita staggers while the android is unmoved. The director explains that AR2's solid-state computer brain is highly impact-resistant, unlike Alita's flesh and blood brain. Defiant, Alita steps up and says she's not done, but the android replicates the same move she used, ducking under her strike. She flips and strikes the cybergirl in the face with a knee. Alita goes flying into a rock face. She's in a state of disbelief that her Panzerkunst isn't enough to overcome this lifeless puppet. The android isn't done, drop-kicking Alita so hard it shatters the rock behind her. Lou begs the director to stop the android before she kills Alita. The cyborg girl can't believe that the past 10 years of her life were all for the sake of this combat machine. She tells herself she can't look away. This is a mirror, and what it reflects is the truth. This doppelganger represents her. Alita screams in denial and shields her face as she's beaten into the ground. Observing the fight on the monitors, Eisenberg is surprised. Despite the prowess of the android, he'd expected it still wouldn't compare to the experience, creativity, and subconscious talent of the original. The android has surpassed his expectations, and A1 is no longer valuable as a data sample. He says she may be disposed of. Lou sweats in consternation over the idea of Alita being killed, clutching mini Alita in her hands. Eisenberg orders AR2's operator to have her take over the Nova mission, but then Lou Collins pulls a gun. I wouldn't have guessed she had it in her. She demands they stop that AR unit right now. She repeats herself, gun pressed to the operator's head. The other operators start screaming. Eisenberg is completely shocked by this turn. Meanwhile, the android has ripped out one of Alita's eyes and popped it into its mouth to mock her. Ghoulish. The cyborg struggles to her feet and launches a kick. AR2 catches her leg and strikes it with her knee, breaking it off at the calf. She laughs and tosses Alita's foot away. Back in the office, Lou is shaking but not backing down. Eisenberg tries to get her to calm down and think about what she's doing. She's doing this for some surface dweller that she's never met in person. Why would a citizen of Zalem perform such a violent outburst for her sake? Lou looks like she's going to be sick. In the fight, AR2 picks up the Damascus blade, laughing. Alita stirs at this, launches herself forward, snarling at the android not to touch that. AR-2 dashes past her, and Alita's left arm goes flying, cleanly cut at the shoulder. She thinks about Ed's last words to her as he gave her the Damascus blade, telling her not to lose. Alita apologizes for failing him, and not just him. She thinks about Joshigon and her old Martian master, even Makaku. She thinks of Den, Koyomi, Figure 4, even Zapan and Knucklehead. She thinks about Ito. Alita falls and apologizes for failing everyone. She got so far and tried so hard, all on her own. She knows they'll understand, but she's just sick of fighting. Luke calls out to her as the android goes for a decapitation strike. Alita muses that, at last, on the other end of this blade, she'll be able to see Yugo again and rest. Lu won't have that. She won't have Alita die on her. She squeezes the trigger and shoots AR-2's operator console. The android jerks and freezes from the feedback. Alita is confused for only a moment. Then she starts to scream in rage. The cyborg surges forward, snatching away the Damascus blade in her teeth and decapitating the android in a single twisting movement. AR-2's head rolls away into the dust as its body collapses. Alita pants and sheds tears of exertion and emotion. Then the Damascus blade falls from her mouth and she collapses beside her doppelganger's body. Lu is still in a standoff in the GIB office. She drops her gun. Alita is safe, but what will happen to Lu? Eisenberg composes himself and puts a hand on her shoulder. He tells her she is sick and hereby relieved of duty. She will need to be administered to at the Medical Observation Center. Lu questions him as a large machine with a syringe enters the door behind her, seemingly poised to capture her in its mechanical arms. The director moves on, judging that the test was still a success. AR-2 is gone, but they still got valuable data from the incident. He gives the order to activate units AR-1 through AR-12 for use against Barjack. While all of this is going on, Chaos has finally reached Mount Norad, at which point he immediately falls to his knees. His legs turn to jelly with the thought of what's to come, but he tells himself to get a grip and ask Yasmin to give him strength. He doesn't think anyone else is capable of living the fierce, unpredictable life that Alita has led, but he knows he can be stronger than he is and worthy of her. He announces himself to his father and asks him to open the gate. The stones move, revealing a camouflaged entrance sunk into the rock. Bizarrely, the opening has been designed to look like a big, smiling mouth, like the entrance to a funhouse. Chaos enters and is utterly flabbergasted by what he sees. It's a full-blown theme park inside this mountain, including a large Ferris wheel, carousels, and a roller coaster. There are even trees in here. The next chapter is called 1,000 Faces of Madness, and boy does it live up to that title. In this initial visual, Chaos realizes that the horses on the carousel are real horses. I'll reiterate, those are real horses that have been surgically grafted to the ride with metal poles going through their bodies, and they are shrieking in distress. Chaos is dumbfounded. The whole place is damn eerie even aside from that horror show. As Chaos looks around, he hears his father's voice, saying he's glad he's come. The voice is coming from a recreation of Nova's head that adorns the carousel as decoration. He reiterates that he's glad to see his son. Back in the wasteland, Alita is shocked into consciousness. This shock button was foreshadowed in the first chapter of this arc. Lu didn't want to use it, but Eisenberg has no such hesitation. Alita jerks upright. The director informs her that the test is concluded, and she should continue her mission to apprehend Nova. Alita is in a poor state. She's beaten, missing an arm, an eye, and a foot. Her 10-year search for Ito was wasted. She eyes the Damascus blade and severed head of her double. Eisenberg orders her to get moving, but Alita quietly tells him to kill her. She accuses him of taking everything from her and says she had enough of this. Eisenberg, with great calculation, asks her if she really wants to say that after Miss Collins was let go for saving her life. That gives her a start, and Alita realizes that must be why the replica stopped long enough for her to destroy it. The cyborg balls her fist at the knowledge that Lou did that for her. The director assures her that this is her final mission. Once it is complete, she will be removed from Tuned and allowed to retire. Alita is surprised at the idea that she might be free. It reminds her that she has a deal with Figure 4 to fulfill. He's waiting for her. She isn't all alone again, and so she must fight. Back in the Granite Inn, Chaos opens his shirt to reveal the device embedded in his chest. He reveals to his father that he knows about Den, his alternate personality that uses a slave unit to lead the Barjack rebellion. He knows that Nova was the one that embedded this spiteful thing in his chest. Chaos accuses his father of creating Den in the first place and using his son as a human experiment. Nova admits that he did indeed place that slave unit in his son, but the crucible that created Den was Chaos's own heart. Far away on the battlefield, Den leads his Barjack forces against the defenses of the factory. Even Koyomi's getting in on the action, and quite bloodthirsty too. Nova explains that Den's persona and actions are all the result of the emotions that Chaos has suppressed. Their discussion is interrupted by one of those horses bodily throwing itself from the carousel, ripping out the metal pole holding it in place, and disemboweling itself. The horse takes a few steps before collapsing, gushing blood. Nova finally appears in person, remarking that it was a foolish horse. If it stayed on the merry-go-round, it wouldn't have died. This is a lesson, he says to his son. Chaos disagrees. He says this horse died taking its last steps where it wanted. Nova is not displeased, remarking that that's not what the old Chaos would have said. I know this is being used as an object lesson about dying on your own path rather than meekly following the path set for you, but that's probably the most messed up way I've seen that message expressed. Chaos draws his katana, saying that he's done taking Nova's words at face value. With sword in hand, he announces that he will sever his father's rule over him. He slashes at the professor, but he only shatters a mirror. He doesn't have time to be confused. Suddenly, the visage of his father appears in many mirrors around him. Nova laughs and exclaims that he'd actually like Chaos to carry on his research. His psychometry is capable of inheriting the entire breadth of his knowledge. Chaos says that, as a child, he admired Nova more than anyone in the world. He told Chaos once that his goal was to cure humanity of all ills. But what about now? Now he's nothing more than a madman. Abruptly, Chaos finds himself falling in empty space. Then he lands in what appears to be a giant gelatinous brain. He gasps and retches, but tries to calm himself. He reasons that this must be an illusion as he looks out at a seemingly endless expanse of brains. If he gives in to fear, he will only sink deeper into Nova's trap. He closes his eyes, then opens them. Suddenly, he finds himself standing next to his father, who says, "The world is not divided between sanity and insanity, son. There are merely 1,000 faces of madness." He grabs Chaos by the wrist and continues, "All mental states are just a different face on the surface of madness, and when you surpass the limit at the end of self-pursuit, you reach the plane of freedom. And I want you to understand its glory, my son." He announces his first lesson and shoves his son's hand into the still-living brain of a test subject. Chaos shrieks and the test subject laughs insanely. "What's important is not to think, but to feel," Nova says as his son groans incoherently. I have no idea what feedback his psychometry power is getting from this, but it must be horrific. Nova shoves Chaos's hand further into the brain, shouting his second lesson. What are we? What is the meaning of life? Where are we going, and what should we seek? Why are we here? You must constantly ponder the ultimate questions as high as you can take them. Chaos is terrified. He thinks to himself that he should have known he was no match for Nova. He thinks about Alita. Outside, the girl herself finally arrives at the Granite Inn, having fashioned a peg leg for herself. We're going to leave the story at Granite Inn for now, though, because the next chapter, War Chronicle, focuses entirely on Barjack's assault on the scrapyard and Zalem. On that same day, just before Chaos fell in defeat by his father, the 5-year war between Barjack and Zalem was reaching its climax. We see the massive Hang railgun moving along, surrounded by flag-bearing Barjack troops in high spirits. A reporter, of all people, is actually taking pictures of the thing. The bandits shout at him to make sure it looks good. Koyomi waves at him from another vehicle to take a picture of her while she tries to get Fury to pose. The picture turns out pretty good, actually. The reporter, we later learn his name is Buick, thinks to himself that something about today reminds him of the distant past. His life changed a lot when he was captured by Barjack 3 years ago. Upon hearing that he used to be a journalist in the scrapyard, they decided he could be useful for propaganda purposes. He became a VIP prisoner, tasked with keeping a record of Barjack's battles. Things feel different with the sky overhead, not like the scrapyard where Zalem hangs over everything. It looks like they let him execute some deckman prisoners, which he might have been a bit too into. There are human brains in those things. He's also done interviews with various bandits, even Knucklehead actually, who was very blunt about how he's just here to kill people. A gunsmith explains that he makes copies of the guns Barjack has excavated from old world ruins. When asked what message he would have for Zalem, another says, "Give me back my fields," for unclear reasons. One bandit elaborates on his theory that Zalem is a race of hostile invaders from another planet. Another admits that he's afraid of dying, but Den assured him his death would not be in vain. Our reporter asked Den himself what sort of place he would build once Zalem is gone. He just says, "A land where birds can fly." Buick recalls the awe he felt when he first saw the Hang railgun under construction at the Barjack factory. Den explains that it's named for the thunder god of a tribe of natives that once inhabited this land. It's more than a weapon of destruction. It's a symbol of a promised future, the determination not to turn back, and the assurance of victory. He's seen many soldiers leaving messages on the weapon before going on missions. There isn't a doubt in their mind that the Hang will bring Zalem down, and they will die for the sake of future freedom. The reporter found himself jealous of them. Then 2 weeks ago he saw something that made him doubt his very eyes, Alita's confrontation with Den. Buick was fascinated by the sight of Zalem's Angel of Death. He asked Koyomi about her, and she teased him about being in love with Alita. The reporter admits that he's fallen for her. The flames of desire burned in his gut for the first time in years. The truth is a bit darker, as it turns out. He lied about being a reporter in the scrapyard. He was actually a serial killer that targeted women and kept photographs of their gruesomely mutilated bodies as trophies. He was forced to flee the scrapyard after unwisely selling a few of those trophies and getting put on the bounty lists. Now his old urges are telling him to do the same to the Angel of Zalem. Standing beneath the great cannon, however, he feels ashamed of his urges, unworthy of the lofty ideals of Barjack as a miserable excuse of a man. He wishes he could do something greater. It seems this is a bit of a theme with many of Barjack's recruits. They're fanatically devoted to Barjack because it allows them to aspire to something greater beyond their miserable lives. In its more extreme form, further interviews show us that casualties with ruined bodies willingly have their brains attached to the rounds fired by the Hang cannon. This is an honor, a way for their wills to live on towards the ultimate destruction of Zalem. Now that great moment has finally arrived. Barjack loads a truly massive shell into the cannon with a crane. Loading complete, they aim for the great shaft that allows Zalem to hang over the earth. The cannon raises high to meet the desired arc. Barjack screams wildly that the anticipated moment is here as Den is informed that they can fire at any time. He points his spear at the floating city and bids their spines tremble at last before giving the order. The order is relayed, but the artillery chief stops short of firing, pointing to something that has perched on top of the barrel. The crowd gasps, and some of them recognize a familiar face. It's a girl, one outfitted with technologically advanced armor, wings, and a big gun. It's another android replica of Alita, AR-10 judging by the number on her forehead. She announces that they cannot win this battle and must surrender. Koyomi and Buick think it's Alita. As the android waits for a response, Koyomi recalls Alita's dire warning from their last meeting and addresses her. She affirms her choice to stand with Den despite how much she likes Alita. However, Fury pulls at the girl and communicates that this isn't Alita. AR-10 perches on the Heng's barrel and looks down on the Barjack forces. Buick is getting a bit too excited while the soldiers shout to shoot her down. The android takes flight as the cannon lurches and then fires in a massive cacophonous blast. The mood of elation from before returns as everyone follows the progress of the shot towards Zalem. It's right on target. There's a collective shout to shatter Zalem into pieces. Then the shell stops in an explosion, well before hitting Zalem. Den and the rest of Barjack are shocked at the failure of their cannon. Someone calls for loading another round. The dust clears to reveal that Zalem is entirely unharmed. Within the floating city, Director Eisenberg mocks the filthy little landworms for thinking that Zalem was defenseless. A nearby technician informs him that something called Melchizedek grants permission to use Abaddon for 0.3 seconds. Eisenberg orders them to target the railway gun. Let their deaths teach them the error of their ways. The Abaddon is a scalar field weapon system Zalem has access to. I won't pretend I understand exactly how it's supposed to work, but Zalem's central computer Melchizedek operates it. It produces something called scalar waves, a type of electrogravity wave, to direct energy to specific locations. There's no way to defend against this. So without any warning, the Heng cannon glows for a moment before erupting in a great explosion as its steel melts and the munitions detonate. The great hope of Barjack has been destroyed, and they have no idea what just happened. Den sees the explosion from a distance. Amidst the wreckage of torn and melted metal, Buick is delirious after witnessing the total destruction of the Great Heng. He snaps pictures furiously, laughing with tears running down his face. The death of hope in this image is almost maddeningly beautiful to his unhinged mind. He clung to dreams like anyone, but now he sees he was a fool. Collapse is beauty. He rushes off into the smoke to try and see a greater beauty. The survivors of the blast are being picked off one by swarms of missile bee drones. AR-10 laughs in the carnage. One of Barjack's soldiers calls her a monster and levels a minigun at her, but the space in front of her warps and the barrage of bullets only seems to tear up the ground around her. This is Solid Wing, another of Toon's cutting-edge tools. It uses a similar effect to the Abaddon to create a barrier against small arms gunfire. It can also destroy matter within 20 meters, though AR-10 just uses an oversized gun instead. The single shot pierces right through the soldier's armor and blows out half his body. Elsewhere, Koyomi and Fang have also survived the destruction of the cannon, if not without a scratch. Koyomi is very confused and asks where the Heng went. Nobody around is alive to answer her calls. Fang perks up as a swarm of missile bees approaches. He growls and attacks, knocking them from the air and breaking them, but not before two explode, ravaging him and destroying one of his forelegs. Koyomi calls out to him and cradles the cyberhound, begging him not to die. Fang licks her face as Buick finds them, and not just him. AR-10 looms over the girl and her dog, oversized weapon trained on them. Buick is fascinated by the tableau before him, hiding behind wreckage while watching them. He thinks to himself that we're just ants, an army of little ants living and dying again and again, nothing ever changing. The sun in the sky and bodies in the earth, burning metal. The true form of this world is chaos and confusion. That is the only law. Buick feels like he was having a glorious dream he can no longer remember. The future is invisible. The past is hidden by a veil of smoke. Buick doesn't want to be human now. He is a focal lens starving for subject, an eye of death ever devouring the moment. In his thoughts, he eggs AR-10 on to kill. Koyomi has a more understandable yet still questionable response to the situation. She lobs a rock at the android, calling this Alita a hideous beast and a monster. The android pauses, asking if the girl knows A1, which confirms for Koyomi that this isn't Alita. Fury growls. The young girl demands to know who she is and what happened to the real Alita. AR-10 smirks, explaining simply that A1 was no longer of use to Tuned, and thus was fired. By fired, she means scrapped. With dread, Koyomi recalls Yasmin's prediction of Alita's separation or omen of death. Fury surges forward, lunging for the android only to be swiftly kicked aside. She stomps the cyberhound to the ground with crushing force, much to Koyomi's distress. AR-10 levels her weapon at Koyomi and tells her to die. Buick is trembling and egging her on, but then he does something that surprises himself. He emerges from the rubble and addresses the android, asking for an interview with the victor, the Angel of Death of Zalem. His feet just keep moving, asking her inane questions with his microphone outstretched and wondering just what the hell he's doing. He needs to hide or she'll shoot him. Sure enough, AR-10 whirls her gun about as Koyomi calls out a warning. The weapon fires and hits Buick, but the damage isn't immediately fatal, despite a section of his intestines pulling out through the exit wound and the area behind him exploding. It seems the round passed through him with such force that it actually didn't do a lot of internal damage. Buick just laughs, clearly in a state of hysterics. He says he's honored to be shot by the Angel of Death herself, and asks her to do it again, which confuses the android. Nonetheless, she corrects her mistake, having control switch from the ultra-speed piercing round intended for armored targets to the low-speed anti-personnel round. Her distraction proves to be her undoing as Fury sinks his fangs into her throat. The cyberhound pulls the android off her feet. AR-10 screams as Fury growls. She takes them spiraling into the air, yet Fury's bite does not weaken. Buick raises his camera. Koyomi cheers on Fury, telling him to destroy the stupid shitty bot from Zalem. The cyberdog and the android fall together, tumbling into the molten metal remains of the Heng cannon. AR-10 screams as her body is melted away, and Fury sinks beside her, until both are gone. Koyomi looks horrified for a moment, but then whirls to Buick, asking if he got that, how her Fury destroyed that nasty-ass robot. He confirms he did, but he's on his knees now, clearly suffering from his wounds. The reporter gives her his camera, saying there are over 200,000 photos stored on its internal drive, an entire record of Barjack's war. Koyomi cries for Fury. She says she thought he was old and senile, but he was her true family. Buick is spitting up blood now, saying you just can't understand human beings, but he can at least say the past 3 years have been fun. Koyomi is concerned and shakes him, but he's already gone. The next panel gives us a short timeline as Den arrives at the site of the destruction. It took just under 15 minutes from when the cannon fired for Den to confirm Heng's total destruction. He decides that, without the means to attack Zalem directly, any further battle in a large army will be meaningless. About half an hour later, he announced the dissolution of all Barjack mobile troops over the radio. They're ordered to turn guerrilla, infiltrate the scrapyard and sabotage its various factories. Thus ended the 5-year Barjack Rebellion. Koyomi is still clearly in shock from the entire situation. She can't believe it's over just like that. It's lame. She asks Den what he's going to do. Knowing that he's not suited to clandestine warfare in this body, Den plans to charge straight ahead into the factory and go out in a blaze of glory. Koyomi demands to be taken with him. He tells her that she will definitely die if she does that. She does not care. She wants to go out in a moment of glory too. Amused, Den agrees. With Koyomi on board, they charge to show Zalem their final act of defiance. I feel the need to point out that only Koyomi can die in that charge, since that isn't Den's main body, but let's leave what remains of Barjack for now to return to Alita in the next chapter, Ouroboros 1. Rather than enter through the front door of the Granite Inn, Alita uses another nifty tuned gadget called Ankara. It's a single-use device that basically turns to super hot plasma for a few seconds before it burns up. It has several uses, one of which is to quickly create tunnels. With her way in secured, Alita is prepared to finish this. Eisenberg is impressed by how quickly Alita bounced back from her state of abject misery to battle readiness. Nonetheless, he feels any mechanical person should be able to do that. He casually informs her that, while she was unconscious, they crushed the Barjack rebellion. She has no visible reaction to this information. She simply plunges down into the hole, motorcycle and all. Nova is aware of her entrance. Chaos is now strapped to a table. As a pro, she wouldn't come in through the main entrance, expecting a trap. Nova seems a bit regretful of that, considering all the work he put into the theme park. He calls for his henchman, Bizarre, to help look for her. Chaos moans for Alita to come and free him. The girl herself is thinking about Koyomi as she makes her way through the new tunnel. She hopes the girl is alright as she drops another set of tuned gadgets, the laser bug. It basically acts as a relay system that converts tuned communication signals into lasers. It should allow her to remain in contact even while underground. Alita tells herself it was Koyomi's choice, pretending to be unperturbed by Eisenberg's questions. She tells the director that Den tried to recruit her to Barjack. He says she was wise to decline. Zalem is indispensable to the surface. They stand for justice in the world. Alita contemplates the simplicity of the way the director sees the world. Everything is black and white through his eyes. At last, the tunnel breaks through to the Granite Inn proper, some sort of large utility shaft with massive conduits running through it. Bizarre finds Alita on the monitors immediately. Eisenberg reiterates her mission is to capture Nova alive, not kill him. Alita suggests she might shoot him on reflex when she sees him, to which Eisenberg threatens to lock her nerves. The cyborg says it'll be a race to see who's quicker then. Abruptly, Alita feels a gust of wind coming down the shaft. A wall of water roars down toward her. She rides the motorcycle in the opposite direction, which Eisenberg finds hilarious for some reason. Alita races towards an opening where the conduit seems to end. Our heroine screams as she plunges over the edge, tumbling down into the water. She is immediately submerged and thrown from her bike. Alita considers Chaos and Den as she's tossed about in the water, Steel Den and pained Chaos. Since meeting them, she's split between her hard steel parts and her softer sensitive parts. At times, the two grind against one another in a way that drives her mad. She wonders which is the real her. Eisenberg cuts in to reprimand her for losing the bike. She ignores him and proceeds into the facility. There don't seem to be any traps, so Alita kicks in the door so hard it bounces off the opposite wall and crouches down to point her sidearm down an oddly familiar hallway. The cyborg girl hears cheering, of all things. She asks Eisenberg about it, but he just tells her to exercise caution. She slinks along the corridor. More and more familiar sensations start to nag at her. She knows this hallway. Alita emerges into the bright light at the end to find herself in the motorball circuit? The crowd roars. She smells the old scent of burnt oil, and Joshugan emerges from the mist. If for some reason you've forgotten or haven't watched these videos in order, motorball is the death sport Alita had a brief career in from the scrapyard. Joshugan is one of Alita's greatest opponents, the champion of the circuit. In fact, he defeated her in their final fight before he died. That's the fight that Alita seems to be reliving here. In fact, she finds herself back in her old motorball body. The champion enters a fighting stance and says they should see how much she's grown over the past 12 years. He rushes at her. Alita is still in shock as she struggles to block, stuttering out that she thought he was dead. Joshugan knocks her away with a ferocious backhand that sends her sprawling into the side of the track. He's strong, but Alita is still struggling with what all this means. The champion prods her, telling her she'd never beat him in a century at this rate. He sees that she's conflicted. Alita scrutinizes him, then starts to cry. She asks why he died. There were so many things she wanted him to teach her. He laughs, saying that they have plenty of time now, inviting her to give him her best. Alita smiles through the tears and agrees, falling into a fighting stance. Eisenberg is furiously trying to re-establish contact with Alita, but all of the tune functions are frozen. Nova's face appears on the screen, laughing that Alita is his now. He's hacked into her sensory system through her tune circuit and effectively put her into an electronic dream state. We see Alita suspended on several mechanical grabbing hands as Nova explains that she's now battling the strongest foe she'll ever face in her dream. The professor is waggling his tongue at the idea of having Alita's brain as a test subject. Chaos is horrified by this turn of events. Eisenberg is unbothered. He compliments Nova for breaking through the tuned blocking mechanism so easily, and says he can have A1 if that's what he wants. That surprises Nova. The director exclaims that Nova is the greatest intellect that Zalem ever created, and invites him to return to the Hanging City as a VIP. The mechanical arms carry Alita into the operating room where Chaos and Nova are. The young man begs her to wake up, but Nova exclaims that it's impossible. Her mind is trapped in an eternal labyrinth of her own karma's making thanks to his Ouroboros program. He calls his manservant to bring him a victory flan, which he savors before turning to address Eisenberg. He explains that he left Zalem in pursuit of research freedom, so what does he have to gain by returning to Zalem now? He wouldn't be able to perform a good human experiment in Zalem, and wouldn't this be a violation of the rule that all who touch the surface must be imprisoned? The director says he's correct, but this is the desire both of Melchizedek, Zalem's central computer, and the Ladder Council. That gets Nova's attention, describing it as the Extraplanetary Council, suggesting a governing body beyond the Earth controls Zalem. Even Ladder being forced to acknowledge his genius excites the professor, so of course he'll go. Zalem doesn't interest him, but Ladder changes everything. Eisenberg compliments his wise choice. This leaves the professor with limited time to do what he wants with Alita, so he calls Bazard to fetch his tools. Chaos struggles and calls out Eisenberg for betraying Alita, also asking whatever happened to Lou. Nova calls his display pathetic and tells him to stay put while he dismantles Alita. Chaos sheds tears, as there's nothing he can do, contemplating biting his own tongue off to end it all. Meanwhile, Alita is still trapped in her dreaming, and losing her fight with Joshugan. The champion tells her her key is weak, which is how she lost to the replica. That lights a fire in her as she retaliates, insisting that she did not lose. The blow makes Joshugan smile. As they exchange blows, Alita insists to herself that she is steel, and she must pierce the steel. She's always been a being of half measures, split between flesh and metal. All she has is her Panzerkunst, and nothing more. Yet she questions herself. Alita executes a maneuver to lever herself around Jashugan's arm to perform a knee strike on his face, only to be blocked. She takes an elbow strike to the gut, and then a punch that sends her flying and skidding along the ground. Alita just can't keep up. She marvels that Jashugan really is the strongest man alive. The champion demands she get back on her feet. He tells her that he has not mastered the ultimate level of strength. He merely reached the pinnacle of his own limits. A human being is bound by physical limits, and battle itself is the struggle to gain as much freedom as possible within those constraints. He tells her to struggle and worry. This is the only method to find her way. Our heroine pauses to absorb his words. She realizes that he is right. If she stops worrying and wandering, then she'll be no different than a robot. Alita readies her stance again, resolved that she must be herself. Jashugan invites her attack, saying he will fight with every muscle, every nerve, and every brain cell he has. He executes his signature Sidewinder attack, a corkscrewing punch using his rotating arms. Alita rushes to meet it, pushing into the attack. She can see through his attack. She gets under and intercepts the blow with a strike that damages his arm, much to the champion's surprise. He attacks with his other arm, but Alita is already reacting. She punches his other arm too, and then rises with the Damascus blade. She slices through his arm at the shoulder. They each turn to renew the attack, only for Alita to get under his reach and slice into his chest. The fight is over, and Alita has won. She's surprised herself by the result. The champion grasps her shoulder. "Brilliant," Jashugan says with a grin. He tells her that she can still be much stronger, and that true strength is not measured in battle ability, it is living with pride. So he tells Alita to live and reach the heights that he could not. She says his name, but the dream is dissolving into static. Then, Alita wakes up, much to everyone's shock. Our heroine struggles to her feet with a cry, breaking free from Nova's Ouroboros program. The professor gapes in shock that she managed to awake all on her own. We move into the final volume of Battle Angel Alita in the 48th chapter, No Brainer. Alita stands tall in Nova's lab. The professor is trembling with excitement, calling her brilliant, beautiful. Bazard attacks her, but she dodges his hook with ease and retaliates with a kick that takes off half his head. Blood splatters across the room along with his eye. Nova tries to make a run for it, but Alita fires in his path to dissuade him. He's pinned down against the wall. "Hello, Professor Nova." Alita sits with her gun casually leveled at him. "I've been looking for you." Eisenberg desperately tells her to stop and not harm a hair on Nova's head, but tuned functions are still frozen and he's unable to do anything. Chaos explains the situation, that the director cut a deal with Nova and abandoned Alita to die. He tells her to shoot Nova, that his father is nothing but a demon that brings nothing but pain and misery to the world. Nova protests indignantly, even as he breaks into a sweat. He says he was providing worthless human beings a proper value. He doesn't deserve this slander. If anything, they should be praising him. Nova doesn't quite get to finish that statement because Alita brutally pistol whips him across the room, shattering his teeth in the process. She scoffs at his frailty. The thought that she's been dragged around by such a weakling all this time makes her furious. She puts her foot on his head as he is clearly in pain. Eisenberg sputters and is practically foaming at the mouth, cursing Alita. He calls her a mechanical imposter. Her entire being is not worth a single cell from Professor Nova's mind. If he does not pull back this instant, he will brand her a traitor and send in the AR series to summarily execute her. She meets his threat with a smile, telling him to bring it on. She'll destroy every one of those fake replicas. Eisenberg is gobsmacked. Chaos is in awe. In the mere day since he last saw her, she's become stronger as a person. Alita glares down at Nova and tells him to beg for his life if he must, but she will not spare it. The professor complains through the bloody ruin of his teeth that he can't bear the thought of not being able to taste flan again. Then something occurs to him. He asks about Ito. Alita almost pulls the trigger then and there as he asks if she ran into Ito. Her eyes narrow, and she kicks him in the gonad so hard he lifts off the ground. Ouch. Alita lowers her gun and very grudgingly offers thanks for keeping his promise and bringing Ito back to life. She demands he tell her what is the Zalemite secret, the thing so terrible that it broke Ito and led him to erase his own memory. Nova starts laughing. Eisenberg is confused, not knowing what she's talking about. Chaos looks on in silence. The professor wipes some of the blood from his mouth and asks just what exactly a surface dweller like her would do with that knowledge. Alita just explains that she doesn't care about Zalem, she just wants to know what tormented Ito. So Nova agrees to show her, taking up a vibrating knife from his equipment. He bows his head and offers the very secret that turned Ito into an invalid. He begins to cut into his own head, sending out a spray of blood as his audience recoils in horror. He laughs maniacally as he removes the top of his head. Feast your eyes upon this, the true form of the Zalemite mind. He tips his head to reveal no brain. There is no brain in his skull, only some sort of chip marked MIB. Alita is aghast, asking where his brain is. The director is just gaping in horror. Nova explains. That tiny biochip in the center of his skull is handling all the functions of the brain. Zalem's children are born through a strict eugenics program and undergo many tests of their abilities as they approach adulthood. At 19, they undergo initiation and receive the mark of Zalem citizenship on their foreheads. This initiation is a surgery in which the brain is removed and replaced with a biochip with all the subject's memories copied onto it. Trembling, Director Eisenberg touches the mark of citizenship on his own forehead. Replacing the top of his head, Nova says that the entire process is hidden by the Medical Inspection Bureau. Looking queasy and baffled, Alita asks if he's even human. Eisenberg almost looks like his heart stops at that question. The professor laughs. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. It's cold comfort in this case, but Nova points out that Alita has a mechanical body and a biological brain, while they have biological bodies and mechanical brains. It's nothing more than a difference of combination, as he sees it. Thinking of Lou and Ito, Alita asks why they would do such a thing. Nova explains that the brain chips regulate and standardize the citizenship's abilities and allow for perfect management of the city with no stress. There are very rare cases of faulty brain chips, people like Ito and Nova himself, who lose the brakes meant to keep them in line. Alita asks what Zalem is, who built it, and why, but Nova does not know the answer to that question. His working hypothesis is that Zalem is an experiment, its people nothing more than guinea pigs. Chaos says that learning this fact is what led his father to flee Zalem and begin his research into karma. Alita can only stare at all this, while Nova is smiling brightly. Director Eisenberg is completely losing his mind. He screams that it must be a lie. His mind cannot be run by a machine. The operators in the office look on in confusion as he rushes to the washroom and takes up an electric saw. Zalemites are raised with the motto, healthy minds, healthy bodies. So this can't possibly be true. He begins sawing into his own head over the sink. The top of his head falls to reveal a brain chip where his brain should be. He screams about his missing brains, which swiftly devolves into deranged laughter. He stumbles back into the office, the workers running from him. Then he shudders as dozens of syringes are embedded in his back. He falls, revealing a machine marked with the acronym of the Medical Inspection Bureau. The machine opens fire on the hapless operators, riddling their bodies with syringes before the signal is lost. Despite herself, Alita is horrified. Nova blithely observes that he seems to have facilitated a little purge. Chaos calls out a warning as Barjack grabs Alita from behind. The room shifts, causing a curtain of hyper-pressurized water to divide it. Alita tries to fire on the doctor, but her bullets can't get through. He pops open what looks like a garbage chute, announcing that he's lived too long to meet his end in a place like this, and jumps down. She can only scream his name in fury. Barjack has her in a tight grip. She reflects that she really should have remembered that they keep a supply of Nova's restoring nanomachines in their bodies. Nonetheless, Alita is much stronger than the henchman. She tears her arm through his arm and grabs his jaw. Alita flips the massive man over her and slams him into the ground with such force that he basically explodes into a pile of dismembered limbs and viscera. She's ready to go after Nova. First, Alita stops to free Chaos and seems distraught. She says she doesn't understand. Is finding out your brain is on a chip really such an insanity-inducing realization? So terrible you'd give up everything to forget it? She covers her face with her hand, saying that Ito would always be Ito to her, no matter what, so why did he do that? Chaos has one of his moments of wisdom, telling Alita that no matter how much love she feels for Ito, she can't know everything in his mind or understand all his suffering. She must not blame him. Alita is struck by this and rubs her eyes. She says he's right and notes that he does say something brilliant sometimes. He calls himself an expert in human weakness. Now is not the time for philosophizing, though. They can't let Nova get away. Elsewhere, the professor displays surprising athleticism as he exits the chute with a flip and a skip. At last he says, Ladder is calling for him. He has transcended being a Zalem guinea pig by his own sheer brilliance. He opens an escape hatch of some kind, only to be washed away by a flood of water. Chaos's voice comes over the loudspeaker, announcing that there is no escape. Radio Man has taken control over Nova's control station. His father may think he's escaped from them by using the duct, but Chaos understands the entire inner workings of the Granite Inn thanks to his psychometry. He's flooded all of the escape hatches. The only way out is the front door. Chaos quickly relays Nova's whereabouts to Alita and directs her down a corridor. We see a cross-section of the Granite Inn. Nova is way down in the guts of the facility, while Alita is working her way down through specimen preservation and Chaos is up in the monitor room. Nova complains about his son daring to challenge him as he nimbly navigates the utility area, but seems happy for the test. Both Alita and Chaos are agents of his karma. He would be a failure of a karmic researcher if he couldn't overcome them. He finds his way to a console before a large tank filled with some liquid. He addresses it by his henchwoman and paramour Eli, asking her if she's going to lie in the bath all day. She teases him about sounding panicked and pulls herself together. Flesh grows over bone, then organ systems grow into place, then muscle, flesh, and hair. She emerges, feeling reborn. Ah, Eli, my favorite character to censor in this series. I don't really know what she was doing in there, and I'm not sure I want to. Elsewhere in the facility, Alita has slowed down and is leaning against the wall. When Chaos asks what's wrong, Alita says she just isn't feeling it. If the Zalemites are guinea pigs, then they're victims just like everyone else. It's all just too tragic. It seems like her righteous anger is waning. Narrowing his eyes, Chaos directs her into a side room. What's inside is an absolute horror show. I'm not sure how to begin describing it, to be honest. There are dozens of people's worth of brains and body parts in all sorts of twisted and unrecognizable configurations. Alita gapes at the monstrosity of the room. Chaos says this is just the tip of the iceberg. These were traders, residents of the farms, abducted children, Barjack prisoners. all perfectly innocent, normal people. In the 20 years since Nova fled Zalem, he's mutilated enough victims to fill dozens of rooms like this, all to satisfy his own scientific greed. An arm grabs at Alita. It's a trembling figure in a ramshackle cyborg body, begging Alita to kill them. She obliges, blasting them away instantly. She doesn't stop there. Alita shoots into the horrifying experiments and tears out life support systems. Our heroine pants amidst the carnage of her mercy as tears run down her face. Alita admits Chaos is right. The only people that can stand up to him here and now are the two of them. Personal scores and Zalem are beside the point. Nova does not deserve forgiveness. A figure appears behind Alita, teasing that she's just as emotional as ever. Eli has made her appearance. She asks the cyborg girl if she ever thought about where she was going to die. Alita only scowls in response. Eli doesn't mind, saying she never has. She doesn't have to, as she has eternal youth and beauty thanks to the professor's nanotech. She is immortal. Thus, any uncouth attempt to stop his work will not be tolerated. She raises a hand, and a line of something shoots out, carving through the wall behind Alita as she dodges. Alita fires back, but a wall from Eli's hand blocks the bullets. Chaos realizes Eli is shooting incredibly high-pressure streams of water from that device on her wrist, a supersonic jet that can cut through steel like butter as it slices through the barrel of Alita's gun. Our heroine barely dodges as Eli tears apart the room with the weapon. The woman complains that it isn't fun to torture cyborgs with this weapon. They don't feel pain from severed limbs. Without the pain and pleasure of the flesh, there's no reason to life anymore. Chaos tells Alita to get out of there. Her handicap is too great for this opponent. Eli goes on, explaining her rather weird viewpoint. All those piddling male ideals and love and dreams are nothing more consequential than mold growing on the cheese of bodily pleasure. I think the metaphor got a bit weird there. Eli insists that she is flesh, and flesh is all. Alita draws the Damascus blade from her back. She isn't intimidated. In fact, Alita mocks her. Our heroine says it's too bad Nova's nanotech can't fix the ugliness of her mind, and basically calls her Miss Sausage. Eli scowls and fires back, calling Alita a brain in a can. Chaos jumps in to warn Alita that she can't block that weapon with the Damascus blade. That's the sort of thing that gets used to sharpen the Damascus blade. Nonetheless, Alita attacks with the hardest and fastest swing of the blade she can. Eli creates another shield of pressurized water. The tip of the blade touches it, and cuts right through it. She cuts all the way through the device and Eli's hand. The henchwoman barely has time to scream that she doesn't want to die before the water pressure of her weapon explodes, killing her. Chaos says that the tip of the blade was able to pass through by surpassing the speed of the pressurized jet. I'm skeptical of the physics here, but whatever. Alita just says that her rage travels at ultrasonic speed. And so we come to the confrontation between Alita and Nova in our next chapter, Ouroboros 2. Alita rushes forward while Chaos tries to caution her. This is his father they're dealing with. He could have set up any kind of trap. She just tells him to listen up. Alita can feel every molecule of air around her right now. Even the faintest fluctuations in electrical flows within 15 meters are at her beck and call. She's never felt such a triumphant surge of ki, so she'll destroy him no matter what traps and obstacles he throws in her way. Our heroine drop-kicks a heavy metal door right off its hinges, declaring she cannot be stopped. And there he is, Nova standing in the generator room waiting for her. Alita kicks off the metal door to propel herself at him as he speaks. Give the angel her battle, and the warrior her rest. She asks him if he thinks he's a god now. As Alita swings her blade at him, however, Nova and the world around her seems to vanish in a blur of digital static. She finds herself falling in what she recognizes must be Nova's Ouroboros program, calling out, "Not again." In the physical world, Alita lands behind Nova, visibly shaking. He compliments her for managing to land despite the absence of her conscious mind, saying he should keep his distance because she still might slice him to bits. Chaos isn't worried, telling his father that his Ouroboros infinite loop can't stop her now. Nova explains that despite the destruction of GIB, Alita's Toon channel is still active, so he can still access the Ouroboros program he hacked into it, but he isn't using it to toy with her this time. Nova grimaces in determination, telling his son to listen to him. He came back from hell with a vengeance after suffering despair and madness that beggar the imagination of the ordinary mind. He will now delve into her dreams and bring the will of that humanoid weapon to heal. Attaching electrodes and a headset, he tells Chaos he can watch from the safety of his world. Chaos can only look on in horror as an image of Alita in an alley of the scrapyard appears on the screen. Our heroine whirls in confusion, finding herself wearing the outfit she favored 12 years ago as a hunter-warrior. The masses of the scrapyard bustle about just outside the alley. It's just as terrible as she remembers. I count at least 5 dead bodies and what looks like a rape in progress in this image. Remembering her last experience in this dream, Alita tenses for her opponent to appear. Who will it be? Makaku? Zapan? Whoever it is, she'll be prepared. Someone calls out her name, and she turns to see Ito. Ito apologizes for keeping her waiting and says they should head home. Alita does not respond for a moment, then addresses him. Ito asks what it is, only for our heroine's fist to obliterate his head. She apologizes and twists her head to avoid looking at him. She won't be taken in by the illusion. Ito's headless body falls at her feet, blood pooling onto the ground. Alita closes her eyes, but the dream does not end. She begins to hyperventilate and panic. Nova observes from a nearby rooftop. Serving himself a spoonful of flan, he says they're just getting started. Alita's world shifts. She finds herself waking up in bed, her old room where she lived with Ito, in fact. The doctor himself enters with a steaming pot of coffee, wishing her good morning. She tells him she had a nightmare, but after catching her reflection in the coffee, she remembers that this isn't real. It's a dream, Nova's trap. Alita stands abruptly, sending her mug smashing to the floor. She tells Ito she has to go. All this is only inside her dream. Ito doesn't really react much at first, just offering a sort of benign smile. He pinches his cheek and assures her it's not a dream. She admits it's quite substantial, touching a wall, but tells him this clinic was destroyed over 10 years ago. Ito gives her a stricken look, but Alita goes on. She explains that he lost his memory and is living under another identity. She nearly got executed after stopping Zapan. He looks on with greater concern as Alita gets worked up. She talks about getting spared on condition of losing her freedom and becoming an agent of Zalem, how she endured, wandered, and fought for so very long. Ito wraps his arms around her and pulls her into an embrace. He tells her it's all right. She insists that it's not, that this is all a dream, but he tells her that he would rather give up his life than put her through such sadness. This is everything Alita wanted, the home she wanted to come back to. Oh, how she wishes she could stay. Alas. Ito coughs up blood as Alita impales him through the chest. She tells herself it's just a dream, yet our heroine dare not look at his body as he falls. Ito's corpse slumps to the ground in a growing puddle of blood. Alita trembles. She turns to the mirror, failing to restrain her tears. She cries and falls to the ground beside Ito. Shaking, Alita puts her hands on his body, repeating that she's sorry and won't do it anymore. She says she won't disobey anymore and begs Ito to come back. She shouts for someone to help. Nova watches from a nearby rooftop, satisfied. She just needs one more push. Alita's world shifts again. We find ourselves where this story began, the twilight piles of refuse fallen from the city of Zalem. Countless dead mechanical bodies are rearranged by cranes, among them Alita, as Ito first found her. But this time, it won't be Ito that finds her. As she opens her eyes, Desty Nova approaches. He lifts her from the scrap with a cackling laugh. Alita, who can't remember anything at this point, wonders who he is. He seems scary. Nova gloats. Her willpower is close to 0 now. She doesn't even understand who she is. Ito comes up behind the professor, asking him what he's found. He's surprised to see the girl, whom Nova suggests will serve well as tonight's test subject. Surprisingly, even this version of Ito, born from Nova's program, isn't going to stand for that. He kicks the professor in the face and snatches Alita from him. The cyborg instinctively recognizes Ito's presence as reassuring. Nova is surprised by this turn, but it will serve his plan just as well. She can drown in the honeyed ooze of inner peace until her blade of instinct rusts away and can never be used again. Back in the clinic, which the sign gives us as Daisuke Ito's repair and karmic laboratory in this dream world, Ito and Nova settle on giving the girl the name Gally. Okay, this requires a little explanation because the author and the translators are kind of having a little fun with one another here. You might remember this from my first video of this franchise. In the original Japanese, the name of the protagonist is Gally and the title of the franchise is Ganmu. When this series was first translated, the character's name was changed to Alita, and the title was changed. By this point in the manga, the author knew about the name change and decided to have a little fun by making her fake name in this sequence Alita. When the translator got to this section, he just switched it around, using the character's original name, Gally. Everyone got that? Good. At any rate, Ito and Nova discuss building a body for her. The professor has some unorthodox ideas, like making her an octopus, but Ito shoots that down. He wants to make her beautiful. Nova pokes at him that he wants a life-size doll he can play dress-up with, which he does not deny. Ah, the kinda creepy side of Ito. Haven't seen that in a little while. Meanwhile, Chaos is watching all of this from the monitor room, mustering all of his psychometric power to save Alita. He believes he can use this power to free her from the shackles of the dream. He's expanded his use of psychometry to access the computer chips themselves, which he hopes will allow him to destroy the program. He's been too afraid to try something like this before, but now he thinks he can do it. He pours his will into the console with a burst of psychoactive power. Within the dream, Nova notices a distortion in the sky but remains unconcerned. He calls his son a fool. Running the Ouroboros program through tune channels means it has dual layers of protection. Indeed, Chaos reels back, bleeding from eyes, ears, and mouth. He collapses to the ground as Nova gloats. One biological brain cannot overcome the advanced computers at both Granite Inn and Zalem. Chaos struggles and feels his chest in shock. His heart has stopped beating. He looks at the monitors in numb silence for a moment, then begins to laugh, but it is a laugh of defiance, not hopeless despair. Chaos leaps to his feet and plunges his hand into the monitor with a burst of energy, shouting at the old man not to belittle him. The components of the computer system hover around him, caught in his energy. His clothing and hair begin to catch fire from the electrical current. Chaos grits his teeth, telling Nova that if he wants his life, he can have it, the piece of shit, but he won't like how it turns out. He wraps the system's wires around his hands. In the distant city of Zalem, the real one, the Ground Inspection Bureau's systems begin to spark. Then a torrent of lightning leaps from them to manifest the voltaic form of Chaos. His face contorts in intense effort, and then an explosion rips through the building, tearing through the outer shell of Zalem. With the tuned system and its part of the dual protection presumably destroyed, Chaos reaches through cyberspace for the Ouroboros program. He soon finds it, a simulation of the scrapyard in Zalem above. The problem is a tricky one. If he simply shatters the program, he'll break Alita's mind right along with it. Yet Chaos has little time. His body won't last long with his heart stopped. Within the dream world, months have passed since Ito and Nova extracted Gally from the junk of the scrapyard. Playing the part of the friendly benefactor, Nova asks the girl if there's anything she wants. He could bring her a friend. Upon consideration, she asks for his beloved flan. He very begrudgingly offers her a bite. This is an Alita that might have been, absent her warrior instincts, a bookish girl that wants to study and become a doctor like Ito. Also one that yielded to Ito's desire to dress her up, apparently. The doctor chides her that even her mechanical limbs will rust if she doesn't go out and exercise them, but Gally complains that she likes reading more. Even Nova finds it hard to believe that this docile little girl is the same person as that ferocious Alita, but this is perfect for his plans. As long as this personality takes, he can perform a nano-operation in reality to eliminate all memory of Panzerkunst. A tiny bell rings as a black cat jumps up on the windowsill. Nova spits out his flan as Gally calls the cat Alita. This is the other half of that little joke between the author and translator. In the original, the protagonist takes on the fake name Alita, while the cat is called by her true name Gally in this sequence. Here, the translators just reversed it. Ito knows that the cat seems to have been fighting with stray dogs again, so this animal bearing her true name is how her warrior instincts are manifesting in this dream world, apparently. Also, this is a callback to the very first chapter, because Ito named Alita after his cat that died the month before he found her. Nova gripes that this cat is the one thing he can't seem to deal with. He ought to just poison the thing already. Sometime later, Alita is perched on the roof of the clinic, dangling her legs and blowing bubbles over the cityscape of the scrapyard. Nova approaches and asks her if she's happy. He suggests that if she likes bubbles, he can install a solution inside her so she can blow bubbles at any time. She declines. Still, she continues to happily blow bubbles. Gally asks Uncle Nova if he's in love with anyone. Nova, being Nova, thinks about a woman he wanted to dissect once, wondering if that counts. I shudder to think about the circumstances of Chaos's birth. He doesn't really answer, but Gally doesn't mind. She just keeps blowing bubbles. Something stirs in Nova in this serene atmosphere of simple joys. For the first time, we see him remove those optics of his. He wonders what's been driving him all this time. He wonders at the emotion now leaping in his chest. The man sits by Gally and puts a paternal hand on her shoulder. Filled with an unaccustomed emotion, Nova muses. If only there were no tragedy or death in the world, and he could believe in nothing but joy, then he could find himself believing with all his heart that this moment could last forever. Then the moment is shattered by a great bolt of energy from the sky. The great form of Den, the Barjack leader, rises from the skyline, wreathed in smoke. Ito asks Gally and the professor to come off the roof as the image of Den approaches. Nova instructs Ito to take care of Gally as he rolls up his sleeves. The girl calls out for her uncle, but the man replaces his spectacles and flashes his usual deranged grin. He speaks into a device on his wrist. "I summon thee, conqueror of Mars!" Something massive rises from the ground behind him. It's a giant children's toy. Not kidding, this robot is an actual Japanese toy that was released in the 1960s. But within the dubious scaling of the Ouroboros program, it stands at 320 meters tall, weighing over 800,000 pounds. The professor laughs madly, standing on its shoulder. He commends Den, or rather Chaos's mental image of destruction, for successfully breaking through the program's protection, but he swears that Gally shall not be his. The image of the Barjack leader hoists his sword and swings at Nova's champion. The gripping hand of the robot catches the blade, then the other smashes the centaur mech, knocking him aside. Resentfully, the professor shouts that the present becomes the past in an instant. Every man will die one day. Destiny triumphs over human wisdom in a mad, uncontrollable arc, as though it was always meant to be. The robot's chest opens and spews cannon blasts at his foe. To the last, he curses everything about this universe. He curses the second law of thermodynamics. That's the one about increasing entropy. Down below in the clinic, Gally and Ito have taken shelter, listening to the battle outside. Ito assures her that they're safe, and the professor will surely drive that monster away. Gally looks up, her heart beating loudly for several moments. Then she tells Ito that she needs to fight too. The doctor says that's silly. Why would she fight? Alita the cat leaps down and alights on Alita's shoulder. The girl says that she fights for her own sake. Alita turns to reveal her true face, smiling at Ito. It's the same answer she gave to that question all those years ago, and with it, the program around them starts to dissolve. Alita reveals that she knew this was a dream, but enjoyed it enough. Now it's time to go. She guesses she's a bad girl after all. Ito just looks at her, then simply takes her hand and asks her to be careful. Outside, the program is collapsing. Nova is shocked by this nonsense. He complains that this is his dream and begs her not to destroy his dream. Chaos recognizes Alita's role in this and smiles. The dream explodes into nothing. Alita and Nova stand once again in the real world, exactly as they were before. She turns to look at him as Nova shudders. Alita looks at her nemesis with a soft expression. The professor trembles and prepares an armor-piercing machine pistol. He tells her that if this was still his dream, he would have done anything to keep her safe, anything to protect that eternal moment. He's shaking and shedding tears as he raises the gun toward her. He fires, and the bullet tears through her shoulder as Alita charges. For an instant, Nova and our heroine are face to face. Then, with a swing of the Damascus blade, Desty Nova's head is separated from his shoulders. His head tumbles through the air before meeting a sizzling end down below. Alita watches from above, and admits she would have done the same thing. Now we enter the penultimate chapter of the Barjack Rebellion saga, The Last Blade. The land below Zalem is a blasted battlefield. Barjack vehicles and factory defense equipment litter the battlefield as smoking wreckage. The checkpoint of the Hydra Wall has been breached, and the carnage has entered the scrapyard itself. A fiery explosion rips through the road between piles of scrap, and Den himself emerges from the flames, bearing the scars of battle, but undiminished. He roars at his enemies, scaring the pants off the poor factory mercenaries that call him a demon and beg for their lives. It doesn't do them any good. The civilians of the scrapyard flee in terror from Barjack's last wrathful rampage. Den is confused, though. All he sees are chickens. Why has the mother duck ceased activity? That's Barjack slang. He's wondering why all the factory soldiers like the deckmen and the netmen have ceased operating, and only the mercenaries seem to be active. I assume the disruption of the Ground Inspection Bureau with Eisenberg and the others dead is probably the cause of that. He checks on Koyomi to see if she's still alive. She's exhausted, but assures him she's good to go. Koyomi is very unsympathetic to the citizens of the scrapyard, complaining that they wanted them to evacuate. She's literally taking pictures of them running away while telling Den to stop them, which he does. As they turn a corner, Den laughs that his little tag-along isn't afraid of death. Koyomi says that her ears have been ringing pretty badly and her head is in the clouds, like she's dreaming, but she isn't afraid. Fury and all those in Barjack she'd come to know are dead now, so once they die, they can join them as stars in the sky, looking down on Barjack from above. That makes Den laugh with delight, but a thought calls out to him, calling him a coward. A shimmering form appears in Den's vision. It's Chaos. He calls out the Barjack leader's hypocrisy, as he isn't truly risking his own life in this suicide mission. Enraged, Den lashes out at the Mirage, which Koyomi can't see. Den can tell that Chaos has changed. When asked, his alter ego says that there's nothing more terrifying than not knowing yourself. It wasn't until he met Alita that Chaos finally came into his own. He calls Den nothing but an artifice, a false creation split off from Chaos's mind. He has no life of his own, so he whipped up his own army and caused such bloodshed. Does he think these crimes will go unpunished? He demands that Den stop this war, release Koyomi, and return to his body. Den is outraged at being dismissed as artifice. He swipes his spear through a nearby building, demanding to know if Chaos calls these acts artifice, a mere figment of imagination. Koyomi is buffeted about by the violence. The Barjack leader asks his alter ego how much he really knows about him. His origins came with an overpowering rage. We see an image of their childhood, of Den in control of the body, furiously attacking a thug. He had to learn to control his furious energy, as their body could not withstand it. It became apparent to Den that he was an unwanted outsider to this body and those in Chaos's life. At age 15 or 16, something happened and he flew into a rage, nearly killing Nova and his manservant Bizarre. The professor recognized that this was not his son Chaos, but something else. He sedated his son, and sometime later Den awoke in a mechanical body. This was Nova's solution, to place the transmitter in Chaos's chest, sewn into his heart and central nervous system, that would allow his second persona to control this puppet and move about freely. Nova explains that he has great fondness for people that have great, quote, mental mass. In fact, Den's is so great that he's in danger of gravitational collapse. Now he can achieve what he desires. He left to wander the wilderness and seek his own discipline, as the warrior does, questioning himself the entire way. "I rage, therefore I am," he shouted to the world. Yet from where does that fury that cannot be quelled spring? He was born without a body, and never knew peace or love, for he is the child of fate, the spirit of Earth's rage and vengeance. Even the body Nova built for him is an insufficient shell for his fury. It would require a greater vessel, one that might only be found in empires of the old world soil. As target for his ire, he pledged to bring Zalem down to Earth. Chaos insists that Den has failed in his effort and pushes him to recognize that fact, to admit defeat. Den refuses, insisting that he hasn't lost yet. He charges down the street, but then a drunken man clutching a bottle stumbles into his path. Koyomi lowers her camera in surprise when she realizes it's her father, the old bartender of the Kansas bar. The wretched-looking man begs Den to stop and return his daughter. Den stomps in front of the man, causing him to fall back. Koyomi asks the worthless drunk just what the hell he's doing. He just moans, asking for his daughter back. Angry, Koyomi tells him to just die and demands Den kill him. The leader of Barjack does not. Instead, he silently lifts Koyomi and dangles her in the air by her jacket. She freaks out and asks what he's doing, while her drunken father trembles in fear. Koyomi screams no as Den raises her even higher in the air. Looking at her critically, Den reminds her that she said she wasn't afraid to die. She's confused, asking why he's doing this. Her father shouts her name. Chaos tells him to stop, but Den mocks him. If he's only an artifice, then Chaos can demonstrate it by stopping him. Koyomi shrieks that she doesn't want to die, so scared that she wets herself. Then Den lets go. Koyomi falls, and her father leaps forward to catch her. The impact shatters his legs and probably a few other things, but Koyomi is safe. Coughing up blood, he asks if Koyomi is all right. Den turns away. He gallops away from father and daughter. He insists that he isn't merely a part of Chaos, who can only look on. Suddenly, a barrage of cannon fire shears off Den's left arm. A column of factory armor approaches through the street, blazing fire. Chaos notes that the destruction of GIB must have jolted the flagging defense system back into activity. Den rears back as his spear is broken, reaching for the sword on his back. He shouts, "Live by the steel and die by the steel." He roars as he charges through the barrage of fire. And the text on this page is actually the medieval Latin poem O Fortuna, famously set to music by the German composer Karl Orloff in the 1930s. I'll be shocked if you've never heard of it before. It's one of those pieces I've heard used a lot but never actually looked up what it was. At any rate, as Den charges in defiance of his fate, the translation of the Latin is given to us as thus: Fate is against me in health and virtue, driven on and weighed down, always enslaved. So at this hour without delay, pluck the vibrating strings. Since fate strikes down the strong man, everyone weep with me. Back in the street, Koyomi desperately calls for a doctor for her father. The residents of the scrapyard hesitantly emerge onto the street now that the danger has left the immediate vicinity. Koyomi cradles her father's head as he begs her not to leave him again. She returns his embrace, though sniffs that he reeks of booze. A commotion of the crowd draws the girls' attention as they all point at something in the distance. Koyomi spies the distant figure of Den, having ascended one of the great anchors for the transport tubes of Zalem. Den is in poor shape. The back half of his centaur body is gone entirely, and huge chunks have been blown out of the rest of him. He says that he was born without a body and he lived without a care. His blade fled on nothing but hatred. Den raises his sword over his head. He shouts that they shall now taste his blade as he brings it down with all his fury. The blade breaks, hardly damaging the transport tube at all. His broken sword tumbles away into the air beneath Zalem. Den stands, all his rage and hatred come to nothing, so he chooses the only way to assert his existence left to him. Den declares that he will not return to Chaos's empty husk. With great pride, he chooses death. Den explodes, his great body falling to pieces. The people of the scrapyard look on in shock, and Koyomi captures the moment through the lens of her camera. She pledges to show the world this moment, deciding this is why Den let her go. At last, the final chapter, Epitaph. Chaos suffers the backlash for his efforts, but his heart has started beating again. Alita steadies him. He asks if they are in the Granite Inn, asked with his voice, not through radio waves as he usually does. Alita pauses, wondering if Den has taken over, but he assures her that Den is dead. The entire building shudders as the generators in the depths of the mountains seemingly overload, and the eagle-eyed reader will notice that the fingers of Nova's beheaded corpse begin to move. Probably nothing to worry about. The entire mountain collapses in short order. What a long, long day, Alita offers in understatement. Everything since she fought her doppelganger android has happened over the course of like an hour or two. Chaos says it feels like it could have been a century. He says that he'll be going to the scrapyard now, and asks what she's doing. Alita isn't sure, remembering that she's free from Tune for the first time in a decade. He reveals a printout he got from Lou when they talked yesterday. It was actually her idea. After being moved by his last broadcast, Lou wanted to help bring about peace and understanding. She concluded that the problem is that people can't come and go between the surface and Zalem, so they need to create a permanent connection between the two. Lou showed Chaos a diagram of a 2,500-meter tower connecting Zalem to the surface. It should be quite doable using the scrap material that gave the scrapyard its name and local building techniques. She calls it the Tower of Zalem. Chaos asks her if she could get in trouble for suggesting this, but Lou isn't too bothered. She just says it'll be their secret for now. The director would do more than fire her if he found out. With a look of vicious determination on his face, Chaos says that he doesn't know how many decades or even centuries it might take, but he thinks it's worth trying. Alita notes that his eyes are bright with hope. He invites Alita to join him, but she's non-committal. Maybe someday, when I feel like it. For now, she's going to head west to find the fishing village again so she can see Figure. Now that she has nothing to do, she feels weird, unsure if she should be crying or laughing. Chaos moves in close and cups her chin. He says times like this are when you smile. She tosses him away. Bouncing right back, Chaos laughs and says his farewells. Suddenly, a bunch of mole men burst from the ground and start following Chaos off into the wasteland without missing a beat. Remember that these guys worked for him? I had honestly forgotten about them. Night falls, and Alita drives along in the buggy Chaos had left behind. I guess he plans to walk all the way to the scrapyard. She has some time to think. Hugo once asked her if she had a dream. She doesn't. Not then and not now. She's mostly been tossed around by whatever happens around her. Alita considers that it's an empty feeling to be dragged around like that. At least she's going to see Figure 4 again. That thought makes her smile. Just then, she spies something in the headlights. It seems to be a child with a ball. Alita has no chance to stop. The child is tossed into the air as she tries to brake. Alita is alarmed. The child is violently tossed along the ground to settle in a heap as the buggy slides to a halt. Alita hyperventilates, considering that maybe she shouldn't drive anymore. No more vehicles. She emerges to see the very still form of the child. Her first instinct is to help him, but she's hesitant. After all, what's a little child doing way out here, up in the mountains in the middle of the night? As she reaches for it, it abruptly comes to life, latching onto Alita before she even has a chance to react. She hears a familiar laugh and sees that the child is actually some sort of robotic doll with a timer on its forehead. Boom! A great blast lights up the mountainside like daylight. Debris rains down, bits and pieces of the doll, bits and pieces of Alita's body. There's a big crater in the ground where they once were. Desty Nova laughs. He's alive, in a very bizarre fashion. We see Nova has a second face in his stomach. It's elementary, he says. Who doesn't create backups of the most vital systems? He had a secondary brain chip embedded in his abdomen, I guess. A Zalem aircraft descends as he picks up scraps of Alita's brain. And that's it. That's how this arc ends. Bonkers, I know. I don't mind spoiling it for you to say that Alita's story doesn't end here. There's an epilogue arc for this series and several sequel series. A bit more on that. As far as all the sequel series are concerned, this is the canonical ending of the original series. Last Order, the first sequel series, picks up immediately after this. There are 3 more chapters in the original series that serve as a sort of rushed ending. I'll talk more about the circumstances around that when I do that video, but I just want to make clear that this is where canon stops for the original series. Now, to discuss the Barjack Rebellion itself, there's a ton that goes on in this arc to the point that it's sort of hard to encapsulate it all in a brief discussion. It's certainly a profound journey for Alita. She's actually hopeful at the start of this arc, but much of this arc is really about tearing her down and how she responds to that. Her hopes to find Ito alive seem to come true, but because of his memory loss, she's denied the reunion she wanted. Her hopes to establish some rapport between the surface and Zalem through her relation with Lou and Tuned are dashed when Director Eisenberg reveals the true purpose of the program. She has conflicted feelings about Den, Chaos, and Zalem. She's left at a low point when she finally comes to confront Nova. At that point, there's a very interesting callback to the Motorball story. In that story, Alita reacted to the death of Hugo by trying to become steel, to forget the soft, feeling parts of herself and become a machine. I thought the themes were sort of muddled in that arc, but ultimately it was about Alita learning that that was the wrong thing to do, that she needs to reconnect with her humanity. Jashugan similarly was only able to achieve his ultimate strength when recalling his love for his little sister, and here he appears again to remind Alita of that lesson through her first Ouroboros scene. She's even able to find her motivation again after seeing Nova's crimes, such that not even Nova's attempts to smother her will could contain her. Alita takes her hits and rises above them. This isn't a story about her stopping a great evil or emerging triumphant. Not really. This is a story about her struggling through loss and finding a way to keep going. And then she explodes. There's no getting around it. The bombing death and the reveal of Nova's survival is incredibly abruptly done. That final panel of a headless Nova picking up pieces of Alita's brain as a Zalem vehicle hovers overhead is an unhinged way to end a storyline. I think this very much reflects that the author felt he had to rush to an ending. At this point in the series, the author had decided to terminate it prematurely. I'll talk about that in the ending video. Let's talk about Nova a little bit. Rereading this story for the video actually really made Nova's motivations click for me. He came from a society of people told to prize bodily purity, and when he found out that his brain had been replaced with a chip, that everyone in Zalem was nothing but a lab rat, he went a bit mad. He says that the world is divided between experiments and experimenters, and you can see how he came to that view. His research is about defying fate and circumstance, others but also his own fate as a Zalem guinea pig. That's why he's so excited about being brought to ladder. He's ascending beyond the fate of being a Zalem guinea pig. Nonetheless, we also glimpse a softer side to the professor in that final Ouroboros sequence. There's a hint that, were the world not so crazy and cruel, he could have developed fond feelings for Alita, something she acknowledges as well. With that being said, the reveal of his survival is very rushed and goofy. It sort of detracts from a very emotional climax. That goes back to the reasons for rushing I mentioned earlier. The Zalem brain chips themselves represent an ongoing transhumanist theme for this story. The author likes to challenge the audience's idea of what it means to be human. We call Alita human because she has a human brain. What does that mean for Zalemites who are human in everything but their brain? What does that mean for the android replicas of Alita who are physical duplicates of her with computers for brains? These are all questions that the author would further explore in Last Order. Now on to the politics, or rather chaos in Den. This is arguably the most political story arc for the series, focusing on the rebellion against the rule of Zalem. The question really isn't about whether things should change, but how things should change. Zalem's tyranny isn't in dispute. It isn't quite as simple as Chaos being right and Den being wrong, though. When Chaos is first introduced, he's really quite pathetic. His passive pacifism and appeals to altruism are toothless, rooted in fear and lack of self-esteem. He also acts like a major creep, which really put me off him for a while. He could never change the world as he was, thus he had to grow, which he does. He's not able to do much against his father, but he dedicates himself to making an active difference from now on. He's still dedicated to peace, but he will no longer be passive. I quite like the journey he goes on over the course of this story. Den is different. He presents himself as an avatar of rage against the tyranny of Zalem, and he draws those who share his anger to him. He gives them a sense of purpose that they've never had. He's determined to defy his fate as a mere figment of Chaos's personality. The story very much frames his anger at the unjust world Zalem has created as warranted, but his desire to forge a new world through destruction is just the next in a long chain of violent upheavals. I've seen some call him a bit of a cop-out because of this, but I think that misses the contrast between him and Chaos. Conflict and fighting is the way Den asserts his existence in this world. It makes his view narrow. He doesn't imagine the world can change with less brutality than it already possesses. Indeed, he says that human history is conflict. Thus the world he would make might be better for a time, but the bloodshed will continue sooner or later. Chaos's ambitions are greater than Den's in a way. He has a perspective of human history few others possess on a grander scale. In his view, the only way to truly break the chain of violence, conflict, and tyranny is to achieve change through peaceful means. The narrative ultimately portrays Den's way as perhaps short-sighted, a futile way to seek great change in the patterns of human history. That doesn't mean Den's ideals don't inspire people, though. His strength and bold rhetoric inspire even the worst of the scrapyard to look for a better future. I don't personally love how the author decides to show that, though. Let's talk about Buick. He is a very weird tangent. I think I know what the author was trying to do. He was showing how even the most wretched souls of the scrapyard feel righteous inspiration from Den's vision. But a serial killer that butchers women isn't someone I really want to see find redemption in a righteous cause or get a heroic death. It feels very strange to read. Lastly, I did want to note that this arc marks the series coming full circle. The character that would ultimately become Alita or Galley came from a storyboard he made called Rainmaker, in which the character was a cyborg cop that got caught up in a dreamlike simulation. We see that concept coming back here in the form of the Ouroboros program. That's all I have for today. I will try to get my video on the ending out soon. Then I'll probably try some of the short stories before doing Last Order. Making this video was exhausting, so I definitely want to do shorter videos.